good afternoon, everyone, and good evening, I should say. And welcome out to our regular meeting of April 22nd. And I believe for the record it is about 6:36. And we'll call roll, please, Madam.
Mayor Barrone?
Present.
Councilmember Han?
Here.
Councilmember Peralta?
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Here.
Councilmember Cantu?
Here.
Thank you. If we'll, Mrs. Fambro, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? If everybody would stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll just remain standing for a few seconds, a few moments, and just a moment of silence for all those in our community that continue to strive to do better, and Earth Day that we will continue to conserve and be kind.
Mr. Mayor, also if we could have a moment of silence for Dr. William Kilgore, who passed away yesterday.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Council, we have approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, two quick adjustments. One is under awards and recognitions. I'd like to add an item B. We have two joint proclamations with Taos County honoring Ronaldo Torres and Pelimon Martinez. And then on 11, matters from staff, B, Resolution 1423, budget adjustment request. Third from the last line, all the way to the right where it says transfer $150,000 from, instead of Salazar, that should be 2013 CDBG. Thank you.
Move approval as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Staff? Nothing from staff? All in favor? Well, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have approval of the minutes, March 25th, 2014, regular meeting minutes. Council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
And on March 26, 2014, special meeting minutes. Council?
Mr. Mayor and Renee, page 3, line 41, something about a rate increase about 3, and I don't have it in front of me, 3 what? Do you remember?
I'm sorry, I'm opening it right now.
Oh, okay.
What was in reference to?
Okay, I'm sorry, page 3?
Is that a proclamation?
Page 3, line 41, Renee, if you could read the whole sentence, it'll jog my memory, and Councilman Paul was wondering too what that was in reference to. I was confused, maybe it's just me.
Yeah, Marietta had indicated there was a rate increase, and it should say about 3 years ago.
This is the
Okay, so that should say 3 years ago?
Yes.
Thank you.
Need to add the word years.
Years ago.
Move approval with the amendment.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not call for the vote.
Councilmember Han,
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta,
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu.
Yes.
So, thank you, council. We'll move on to awards and recognition, a presentation of proclamation, and I will take the honors of doing that, and I'll step up to the mic over there, if I may. And it's in recognition of Arbor Day, and basically it's from the Office of the Mayor, whereas Arbor Day is observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion, our preservation of topsoil by wind and water, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas Taos has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Therefore, I, Mayor of Town of Taos, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2014 as Arbor Day in the Town of Taos, and I urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands and to support our town's community forestry programs. I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. And I know we have a few people, and if you would, I'd appreciate it. And I'd like to just present this to you, and I know give you a few minutes to. Thank you. I appreciate it. And give you a few minutes. I know you have.
Okay.
You'd like to speak to us about.
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to thank everybody for letting me be here tonight and handing this proclamation of Tree City USA. Secondly, I want to talk to you about a little bit about trees, or trees that we have here in our cities, and maybe how we can improve our trees in this city. Okay. My name is Paul Brian Jones, and I want to welcome Mayor Barrone and George Fritz as a new councilman. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
I just want to do a few topics. It's only going to take me about 5 to 7 minutes. I say that to my class at the university, so I have 2 hours and a half at my class, so I'll try to make this short. It's hard to do. This achievement that we just got is a great honor. We recognize the importance of our community trees, or trees in the community. We have an old stand of beautiful deciduous trees planted in the late 19th century and in the early 20th century. This being said, these trees are 100 years old. They are reaching the end of their landscaped lives, so we really have to focus on trees. Now is the time to replant the community forest. My idea is to start a community forest management plan with the approval of the town council, and do the 3 major important steps that we have in making a plan. That's planning, policy, and management. And I think we're all aware of those steps that we have to go through. Planning is the most critical part that we have, and I think if we do it properly, we take our time, we will develop a good community forest management plan. One thing we have is a lot of things in place. Pieces of this plan have already been thought about. We've had a town planner that talked about smart codes. We've had a green infrastructure plan that was discussed and developed for 2 years in 2006. We have had, in 2010, we've had the New Mexico State University architect students develop different architect development plans for different parts of the town. So we have a lot of the pieces already developed. All we have to do is put them all together to develop this community forest plan. So if you guys have any questions as I rattle on, please let me know. Stop me. The New Mexico State Urban Forest Council also put together a book called Plan Smart, Think Green. This was developed in 2012, and the old mayor had a copy of this, and I have a copy for the new mayor. So I will give it to him later. In this plan, it talks about water management, fire management. It talks about how to develop a good community urban forestry plan. It actually has a smart code in here that you actually check the boxes and send it into the State Forestry Department. And as the Urban Forest Council, I am the council chair of the State Urban Forest Council. We are advocate to give advice to anybody that needs it. Communities, towns, cities. So this is a good plan that we put together in 2012. You have an Historical Preservation Council already, and they are developing different pieces of this tree management plan. They're thinking about an elm project where we are replacing the Siberian elms with a good elm, and I've been part of that plan suggesting the good elms in our city, because 60% of our tree canopy is Siberian elms. Everybody calls them Chinese elms, but they're actually Siberian elms. Chinese elms are good elms. So another part that we already have in development is a storm response center. That is part of a community forest plan. We already started a tree survey. It was done in 2012 by the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. What we need is some more trained volunteers or an outside source to finish that survey. We have roughly 5,000 trees to still survey in the town. And the survey actually helps us care for these trees. It's a great tool to use for the care and the planning of our urban forest. Replacement is what I talked about earlier. We need to start replacing our old trees, because if Taos didn't have trees, Taos would be pretty hot. It would be pretty, it wouldn't be as pleasing. Stormwater would be an issue if we didn't have trees to slow down our stormwater. The acequias would be a great restoration program to restore, to help watering our trees that used to be planted near acequias that are not running right now. So I know Councilman Fritz is really thinking about helping that project along, and I think it should be restored because it will just help our tree community. I'm going to make this a little bit shorter. When we talk about policy, we have an organization called the International Society of Arboriculture. It's an international society, and they set standards for planting, pruning, and plant health care. They've already been established. A lot of cities and towns throughout the United States follow these standards, and what it is, it actually helps the trees live longer. It's actually developed for the life of the tree. Okay? I can go on and on. Management is something that is part of this planning process. So we need to really think about how to develop town arborists, tree boards. There are a lot of tree boards throughout different counties in New Mexico. There's actually 12 cities that do have a tree management plan throughout New Mexico. So we should just jump on board follow some of those developed plans and follow their leads. Funding is always an issue when we talk about a new project. So funding, there is funding available through the State Forestry Department. It's called the Community Forest Assistance Program. It's a cost share program, and that's how that survey was initially started by the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. They got up to $26,000 to develop the survey, and we can continue applying for that yearly to help us develop a community forest management plan. I could talk about hours about the benefits of trees, but I think we all know what they do. They sequester carbon. Our air is nice and clean here because of the tree canopy that we have. Our soils are still intact because, like the Tree City USA Proclamation says, they hold the soils in place. They actually add nutrients to the soil. They actually bind the soils. And other benefits is solar. They actually cool down our town. If we didn't have these trees, the heat index would actually go up. And with climate change, which we all know is evident and is happening, we need our trees. I talk about cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships. These are working components for tree groups and developing a community forest plan. So that's basically the topics. This is like a syllabus. There won't be a test today. So I just wanted to run this by because this is not a 5 to 7 minute project. It is a 1 to 2 to 3 year project. And I'm welcome to volunteer and help this project come to fruition. Any questions?
Any questions?
Did I take you by surprise?
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
And I'd be glad to look at the booklet that you
Okay.
have and possibly contacting the New Mexico Forestry
Okay.
Division. Thank you.
Well, if you want to, I'm the council chair, so our meeting is May 8th. So if you have any input, I'd be glad to take it to the council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council? Thank you again.
You have any questions?
I just, you're preaching to the choir when you're talking to me. My 5th grade teacher, and I always go back there, had us all on Arbor Day plant a tree.
All right.
And she was an awesome person.
Was this just like a few years ago?
Yeah, just a few years ago.
Well, I do that in the schools today. I do bring in seedlings for the children to plant. So
That's
for Arbor
wonderful.
Day.
Thank
And
you.
we are planting a tree for Arbor Day at the library.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council.
Mr. Jones,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you very much. You had mentioned your May 8th meeting.
Yes.
What time and where?
It is in Bernalillo County, and it's at the Bernalillo County Extension Agent. I can send you an email where the exact location is, and anybody's welcome to come. The council has been together for about 20 years, and they, like I said, they are advisory to the state forester, and we give advice and we help develop community forest plans.
And Bernalillo County's what? What
It's in
building?
Albuquerque.
Yeah, I know, but which, is it their county commission building?
County Extension Agent.
County extension. And what time does it happen, sir?
It's happening from 10 to 2 o'clock.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to talk about our beloved ones.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And
Mr. Mayor,
just before we go on, I just want to recognize our former councilman, Mr. Mike Silva. He's in the audience. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with council, I'd really like to get together with Mr. Jones and Carl Colonius and the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps and see what we can do about getting this grant. These trees are an invaluable part of what makes our community what it is. And like our forefathers, we need to plant ahead for the next generation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Bellis. if you
Thanks,
do that.
Rick.
Thank you. The next item we have is item B, and council, I know Mr. Ballas added this to the agenda, and I believe they've handed a copy of this out to each one of you. I don't want to labor everybody by reading these because these are going to be presented at a I guess they were having a luncheon by the Historic Society, and they want to honor these two gentlemen, and I just thought it was important to bring it before you guys for review. You know, I think it's great if we can, on a lot of these, they asked both the town and the county to recognize different people, and instead of recognize them individually, I think if we're doing it jointly, we're not sitting there side by side reading the same proclamation. Instead, we do it jointly, and I think it saves time both on the town side and the county side in staff time and in the presentation time. So I just would like your guys, I guess, Mr. Bellis, a nod of approval, or I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, these are two gentlemen, Ray Torres and Palamon, that I'm sure everybody in the community knows and have put in decades of community service into Eusekias, the Extension Service, economic development, served on water advisory boards, farm and livestock boards, and are real treasures to the community. And I think it would be a wonderful thing if council gave permission and their signature on the final copy of the resolution when it's prepared by our secretary to honor these two gentlemen and all the work that they did.
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Not. Call for the vote.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Hahn?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll go on to Citizens Forum. Citizens wishing to speak shall have the opportunity to do so for 5 minutes. No action will be taken. I know that there was a few people that signed up, but I think some of the people are on the agenda for different items. So if you're on an item that's I guess not on the agenda, you wish to address the council, please do so. Is there anybody in the audience? Please.
Mr. Mayor, just real quick, if I could, with regards to the joint proclamation, if we could maybe prepare one of these in honor of Dr. Kilgore and present it to his family Thursday or Friday for his services.
Okay. We can get that. Thank you. And just your name for the record. And you
Jean
can actually
Green.
have a seat right here if you like, or it doesn't matter. That's fine. Okay.
Jean Green, and from Taos. Welcome to our new board members. Really pleased to see you there. I wasn't aware of when this vote happened about going forward with the airport expansion, and I'm opposed to that, putting $500,000 into something for the 1% when we have so many needs in our community that are not being met, like our library and youth and family services, recycling, all the things, renewable energy. That money could be used for other things, like putting solar panels on people's homes. I mean, we're not serving our community. We're serving, by expanding the airport, I believe we're serving people who already have money and who want to use jet fuel to get here. And so we're ignoring the fact that about global warming, where we're at with global warming. It's real and it's here. And with the droughts and with the problems with all the water issues, the other thing I see as a potential real problem here is the military coming in and using this airport. They're already using it. According to reports, there were 200 landings by military at our airport in the last year. I recently heard that there was a C-130 that landed. A C-130 contains a huge amount of jet fuel to refuel Osprey in midair. So if we're inviting the military in, what I'm afraid of is jet fuel underground tanks that could leak, just like they did in Albuquerque, where they're having a catastrophe with their drinking water. and we're sitting on the best aquifer in the state. So I have some grave concerns here, and I don't feel that the last council considered the opinions of the people. They considered the opinions of business people who had money and want more, not the people in this town, which is, there are a lot of people who need services, and they're being cut left and right, while we give $500,000 to the airport expansion. So I'm standing in opposition to that vote, and I hope that you will reconsider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Please. And just your name for the record so it's recorded.
My name is Marilyn Hoff, and I'm very glad to see you all here. It's really nice to confront mayors and councilors who aren't talking to each other while other people in the audience are trying to speak and making you feel like you're not being heard. I don't know if I'm going to agree with you on everything, but I do have a lot more confidence that we have a mayor and councilors that are going to listen to us. And I hope you will listen to the voice of the people in regard to airport expansion. I guess I want to stress too what Jean did, is that climate change is real. Every time we fly another jet, every time we fly our cars, every time we burn any fossil fuel, we are contributing to it. We're at a point where if we don't stop now, we're really at the tipping point. I've been watching this series on TV called The Years of Living Dangerously, and I recommend that you all watch it if you can get Showtime, because it's starting to show the effects on ordinary people of climate change. And here we are definitely affected already by climate change, because we are getting smoke from all of these forest fires from all over the West. And this is not an accident. We are going to have more and more wildfires. And in this context, we need to start changing our emphasis of what we invest our money in, because we can't blindly continue to invest in things that burn fossil fuels. It is time to stop, because the fate of the world and the world we leave to our children is really at stake. And, you know, we can't just continue with this trickle-down economic model where if we bring in the rich and the rich bring in their money, it's going to trickle down to the people that are here. If you consider what an airport did for Aspen, Colorado, it brought in many, many rich people. It drove up the cost of living. All the people who were living in Aspen sustainably had to leave because they could no longer afford to live there. We don't want that to happen to Taos. We want to keep all of our people here and able to prosper. Thank you very much, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Bonnie Corman, and I welcome the new members. I'm glad to see you, and I say hello to the former continuing council. I was against expanding the airport 28 years ago then, and I continue to oppose it now, for some of the same reasons of then and some additional ones now. Some of the original issues of concern that caused so many to actively oppose an expanded airport were quality of life, like likelihood of further erosion, of an actual destruction of age-old cultures and way of life, degradation of the natural environment, wildlife, and fragile ecosystems that increased air traffic and larger planes and military planes will inevitably bring, and the fear that building an economy of and for jet setters literally will never trickle down and only offer the same low hourly wages that afford only a subsistence lifestyle here at best. We came to live here in 1971. Both my husband and I grew up in the Southwest, but we were then living in Washington, D.C. We had our first child then and decided to return to the Southwest to raise a family, largely because the East Coast was too expensive and because we felt very keenly the idealistic values of the 60s and 70s. Our two and only choices when we decided to move back to the Southwest were Aspen and Taos. We visited both of them and we had no trouble choosing Taos, basically for its wealth of diverse cultures and peoples. We came only with a few $100 savings and an infant. In the 70s, buying real estate was possible and even affordable, and there were bargains. After a few years of working several jobs between us, we were able to buy a fixer-upper, a shell of a house, adobe walls, muertos in the floor, holes in the roof where wood stoves once burned, no plumbing. We learned about the local lore of our village, and we grew to appreciate the traditions and history of the place. The Acequias, the midwife who brought generations of children into the world in our house, Los Comanches who serenade us each winter, and the original 6-foot hand-dug well on our property that once supplied all the small houses that surround ours. In short, we joined a centuries-old culture in Taos. We created a unique lifestyle and much appreciated quality of life here. Befriending our neighbors and townspeople who are always, and still are, willing and generous to share their many generations of experience, skills, and even wisdom with young gringos. We've returned to Aspen a few times over the last 40 years, and we usually have a laugh about the real estate riches we've foregone by attaching ourselves to Taos and our adobe. Any property bought there in the 70s has appreciated exponentially, and that picturesque small mountain town is now a major high-end skiing resort, community of and for millionaires, well-off skiers, and vacationers. But for the workforce, the property values and cost of housing is no laughing matter. And just as Marilyn said, and most of you probably, maybe have experience of this, people can't live there, who work there, and they have to travel far distances in the mountains in the winter and commute, to have a ski job or restaurant job. This is not a viable vision for Taos, in my mind. We have built a small business in Taos that supports our family, now in the 3rd generation, and pays living wages to our small staff. Small businesses drive the U.S. economy, and it is a fact. Big resort development planned around the expanded airport will not trickle down in our community and will not provide livelihoods. Only the same old low-wage and sometimes seasonal jobs. We want local, grassroots, homegrown development of industries that are already here, like the TCEDC, all the young people who have all different kinds of ag projects, greenhouses. Our farmers markets are just burgeoning. I mean, I'm just amazed. It's like every year there's an additional farmers market. And, renewable kinds of energy, creative ideas that work for Taos and that offer livelihoods, not low wages. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Please. Welcome, Mr. Cordova.
Arsenio Cordova from El Prado. And I, like the others, would like to congratulate the new board members. I attended a meeting at the county the other day, joint meeting, and I was very pleased to see that spirit of collaboration in the county and the town, something that has not happened. I can't be up here without being critical of the previous town council, who always told us that we were their constituents, even though we didn't live in the town. Well, our constituency suffered quite a bit with threats and risks of our land being grabbed by the city in annexation and things like that. there were many things that people in the community were talking about. The election proved by the vast majority of people that voted in the landslide election that we had that we weren't alone in El Prado of thinking what was going on in the town. What I would like to see is that many of the things that we heard in the street have rumors that we heard in the street have turned out to be true. And I, for one, as a citizen of Taos, a taxpayer in the town of Taos, would like to see that the new council and the other two council members that are left, that you would request an audit to be done of the town coffers and find out exactly what, and quash the rumors that are in the town right now of the abuse that happened during the previous administration. I think that if you start with a clean slate, that would be one of the most beautiful things that could happen. It would be nice to have a clean slate in our community, and I congratulate Ms. Cantu, Mr. Han, and you, Mayor Barrone, and to Fred and Peanut, I hope that you guys will work with the new council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew. I'm sorry, I knew you as Peanuts.
I'm Bob Bishop from Taos, and I want to speak to the airport a little bit too. The discrepancy between rich and poor in this country has been pointed out. It's greater now than it has been since the robber barons in the 1890s. Taos is no different. I've been told there's about 42 to 50 people that have private airplanes here in Taos. I've also been told that the money that's going for that expansion out there that we've fought for the last 25 to 28 years is going to take, $24 million, and 1.2 million are going to be spent out of our taxpayer money right here that's not dedicated to any one purpose, including the airport. We've already spent about half of that, 588,000 more or less. So we've still got, 600,000 more or less that can be thrown down that rat hole again, or we can spend it on other programs that people have already mentioned. My feeling is if there are 40 to 50 private airplane owners here, and they need 500,000 to do what they want to do out there, let them chip in $10,000 apiece, which would be not too oppressive for them apparently, and let them pay the 500,000 that they want to do for that deal. Now, that doesn't address the problems that you've got with your, all of the things that have been mentioned about the degradation of the environment, climate change, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't even address that. But let's think about what happened 28 years ago. The Taos News hired a polling company from Kansas City, if I recall correctly. They came to Taos. They asked the people in Taos County, do you want an airport expansion or do you not want an airport expansion? Over 2 to 1 didn't want it, okay? So that showed kind of where the sentiment was for the people who live here and who are the majority of the people here, okay? Another thing happened with a super Walmart when Bobby Duran was mayor. He wanted a super Walmart store. He was all for it. He went on the radio. He was interviewed. Yes, I want it. Here's why I want it. But he said if the people don't want it and it comes to a vote at the town council here, I will vote against it. What happened was it finally did come to a vote, and it was 2 to 2. He broke the tie. He voted against it. He kept his word. He wanted it, but he voted against it. And we didn't get a super Walmart, thank God, okay? Now, what I'm thinking is if we follow the same procedures that we've done on some of these major issues in the past, we should be asking the people. We should have everybody in Taos County have an opportunity to say, would you like to have the remaining $600,000 spent on an airport expansion out there, which you're never personally ever going to get to be a part of in any way? Or would you like to have that money spent on the children, youth, and families building out there that's falling apart to help some of those programs that actually is creating safety in Taos by cutting down on gang activity? Would you like to have some of that spent over at the library where everybody in town across all classes and all races meet constantly? Would you like to have some of that money go over there? Would you like to, plant some trees in Taos with some of that money? What would you like to do? But I would like to see that phrased. We have to make choices now. We're in the down economy. This money doesn't come, for free. Just because it's matching funds, it's not free. It came from our pockets, everybody here. Now, the question should be phrased, do you want the money spent on that airport expansion out there, or do you want it invested in other programs and other facilities in Taos County? And I think everybody in Taos County should be eligible to participate in that poll. And that's what I would do. If I was sitting where you are now, that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And Bob, and just want to respond, just one brief question. As later on in the agenda, you'll see a settlement agreement, and that next portion of money that will be coming not because it'll all be coming out of the coffers, it'll be coming because of the construction out there, the GRTs that will be generated through the construction. So there won't be an additional pot of money that we could spend in that direction, just so you know.
I don't understand.
Well, through the construction,
GRT means
gross receipts tax, and
I pay gross receipts
but
tax every
hold on,
time I
Bob,
buy something.
hold on. But we won't generate any of that if the money is not spent out at the airport. The reason the extra money is coming to the community is because of the money that will be spent out there. So I just want to clarify that. There won't be an additional pot of money for us to spend in the community. The only reason it is being generated from the construction portion of that.
You're saying if it doesn't get, if the airport doesn't get constructed, there's not going to be gross receipts tax from the out-of-town builders that are going to be building it to bring money in so that we can pump in the next $600,000.
The next $600,000 will be generated by the construction phase, is what I'm trying to tell you. Thank you. So, go ahead.
My name is Seth Brown. I wrote a letter to the paper about the airport a couple weeks ago. My family came to Taos in 1945 to start over from scratch. And it was tough to get going here because there was no money. Nobody had money. A lot of the local Spanish families were leaving because it was so difficult here, because there just wasn't any money. We lived on government surplus food, which made us sick, and gardens and stuff. Anyway, it was tough, so there's no question. A lot of people here feel the need to be able to make a living here. Okay, now I'm just going to read the... but the question is how do we survive and how do we make a living here? Okay, reasons to reconsider the airport history. The EIS document does demonstrate overwhelming opposition to the airport expansion. There's a 6-volume set on that. And I went to most of these meetings, and I've conferred with Robin, and we both agreed that it was approximately 95% of the people in those meetings were against the airport, and the Pueblo was always 100% against it. At least one recording of one of the EIS meetings exists, and the head of the National Park Service in Washington came out here and voiced her concern about the airport being built. She didn't recommend that it should be built because the Pueblo is the most important site that they have in the country. That there is, let's see, the EIS shows that there is no valid constitutional basis for airport expansion. The Constitution says that the people are the government. And, okay, the FAA approved funding for the airport despite the facts in the EIS, probably just FAA policy. Our former city council made a deal at Taos Pueblo to approve the airport with no input from the people of Taos or the Pueblo. I joined the group that tried to stop the building of a huge casino at the Casino Lodge with a 4-story parking job, and we stopped it partly because some young people of the Pueblo calling themselves Rise, They were rising against their own government out there. Came and told us that someone from Denver was bribing the elders there to get votes for the casino. And I have heard that there are plans for, there are people working with the Pueblo that are trying to get a big casino built here. Some entity approached our new city council in the first few days following the election and pressured the council to commit spending $486,000, sending $486,000 to Washington to match Fed funding. This immediate pressure on the council made it impossible for the people of Taos to interact with our council prior to commitment of community funds to the FAA. I was waiting for you guys to be elected, and this, by the way, is the best feeling I've had in front of a council in my whole life. Mayor Cantu and Mayor Santastaven and Mayor Gentet were good mayors, but ever since then it's been pretty tough. Okay, let's see, so the entity that exerted pressure on the council should be identified to the people so we understand what's going on. We need to know who it was that pressured you immediately as soon as you were in office. The new council was immediately having to cope with mismanagement of budget by the prior council, maybe adding to financial pressure to approve the airport. There is a petition and there is a pattern in all this. It does look like there are some entities that are carefully maneuvering to avoid community input on the airport issue, probably because of the facts in the EIS. In other words, these entities know that the airport could not be approved if our community had any voice in the matter. From what I have been hearing, the entities involved behind closed doors are the federal government, the New Ski Valley interests, and plans for a big casino. None of these entities have lived in Taos or understand the very deep roots of the many people that none of these entities understand the very deep roots of the many people who live here. And that comes from coming out of extremely difficult conditions and trying to make it, and then this exploding economy. Okay, probably another reason they are carefully planning the future without our input. One thing I wanted to say about this is big money has the potential to change this community in ways that we can barely imagine. Park City, Utah, someone came in there and invested $7 billion. All the locals left. They could not afford the taxes or the land prices. We have something very valuable to preserve here, so we have to be careful of these kind of big money interests. Is there any chance that the trickle down from their plans could outweigh the harmful nature of their plan? They certainly do have enough money to make sure our future becomes their vision if we let them. Do wages ever keep up with the cost of living in the environments they create? Add to that a lavish casino to tempt anyone who seeks a chance at the life the planners live. Another reason, I'm getting close to the end here. Another reason it is probably not a good idea to send any more money to the FAA, a Federal Reserve agency. The Federal Reserve and its agencies are being sued because this private banking cartel, meaning the Federal Reserve, has stolen vast amounts of gold from very old merchant families in Asia. I've been researching several hours every day since 2007 on this subject, and it is true that the Federal Reserve is on the very brink of going bankrupt. I am not alone to see that the Fed and its agencies are facing bankruptcy. In this kind of is this the kind of thing any more of our tax dollars should go into? In other words, will the Fed even have the funds to match it once we've sent the funds to them? And that's a huge subject I couldn't go into. 9 Western state legislatures are moving presently to take back federal lands from the Fed, BLM, and U.S. Forest Service land in Montana. Check out the Cliven Bundy situation. It isn't likely that the FAA is going to survive in its present form much longer. Referendum, countywide, everyone I've talked to wants no airport, and I've talked to quite a bit of people. Thanks to Fritz Hahn for opening an opportunity for our community to have a voice, because that hasn't happened for a long time in Taos.
Thank you. Comments? No comment? Anybody else?
Good evening, Council. I just want to say that everybody who comes here by plane to build,
Excuse me, Mayor?
to develop.
Your name for the record, if you
Oh,
would, please.
Susan McCarthy.
Thank you.
Everyone who comes here uses water. Everyone who comes here showers, uses bathroom facilities, looks for swimming pools. If we develop at the airport and the ski valley, that's a corridor. There's a development already trying to go in that will take the Hondo Seco Road water for houses with swimming pools. The development along that corridor is not really going to serve the town. No matter how we stretch it, it is for the rich and by the rich. And I think it would be a shame. I have already talked to Fritz a couple of times about the roads and the crosswalks of the town, because I'm in home health care, and I have clients who can't cross the street or can't have their wheelchairs on the sidewalks because they're so deteriorated. So, you know, that seems like another issue, except that that's the money that's going to pour into the next piece of this airport thing. And if we use that money for infrastructure and things we need in the town, I have a client who goes to the Youth and Family Center and sits around with her boyfriend because there's nothing going on there. It's no longer a viable place because money hasn't stayed nourishing it and keeping it up. So I'm only speaking because I'm concerned about what will happen to us as a community if we proceed. And I feel that a referendum would serve the community and that there is still time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I just speak on a different issue for just 1 minute?
Okay.
Thank you. Jean Green. I just am aware of all the suicides that have happened at the bridge, hundreds of suicides, a lot of young people, and I think it's time that we get a fence on that bridge. And I'm requesting that the town council request of the DOT that they put a barrier on that bridge. There's no excuse. Aesthetics can't be more important than people's lives. And I know you've heard from Jim Fambro about this, all the bodies that he's pulled out of there. So please, please honor our children. A lot of them are young people. And let's fix the bridge so no more people die over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on then. Under presentations, we have a presentation for Taos Soil and Water Conservation, and I want to welcome Mr. Peter Vigil from the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District. He has a PowerPoint for us, I believe. Thank you for being here this evening. And
Good evening. My name's Peter Vigil. I'm the district manager for the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District. I've been with the district since 1999, and tonight I come before the council with much respect. I want to give you a little idea of the historical collaboration that existed between the district and the town in the past, the great projects that we completed, and I'm here before the new council to offer our services in any way possible as to natural resource conservation issues that you might be grappling with within the urban area of the town of Taos. Briefly, I'm a public of Taos. I'm a citizen of Taos. I was born here, raised here. My parents were here. I know many of you on the council personally. I worked with, my father probably worked with a bunch of your fathers when they were in political office. I am a product of Taos High School, of New Mexico universities. My family resides in Ranchitos on our 50 acres that we still try to farm, right outside the town of Taos where Martinez Hacienda is located. Before I begin, I just want to let you know that two things really stuck out in my mind when I was trying to come here tonight and speak to you about how we used to be connected. And the first one is the Kit Carson Park. For those of you that might not remember, the park was the first park we ever had in Taos, and it was funded with soil and water conservation monies back then. Not the local monies, but the national soil and water conservation monies. There used to be a sign when you walked into that park, right by the gate, that said this park was made in part with soil and water conservation monies. I drove down there tonight to get some inspiration before I was going to come speak to you all, and the sign's not there anymore. So I guess the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to present the town with a sign from the Soil and Water Conservation District, because I'm sure that one got old and rotted and fell away. Another project that we work together on is the Las Cruces Flood Control Dam, which protects all of the town of Taos from flood control waters. It is located in the Las Cruces Arroyo. Out there, if you go directly back on Kit Carson Road, you'll see a huge flood control structure that was constructed out of the Resource Conservation and Development monies. Phil Lovato was on that. The district worked with the town to construct that dam so that in case there was any floods that would come down through that arroyo, the town would be protected. The town's grown a lot since then, but we know that you have an O&M agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which allows you to not have to spend a lot of money revamping that dam because you're inspecting it and maintaining it. And just so you know, the USDA is in Taos County as an invitation of the Soil and Water Conservation District. The agreement that we have with USDA is they are here because the district is here. And they service you because you need their services. So we're all connected. Please look at the slides. How's this go? Okay. Disclaimer, that was a younger and thinner Peter Vigil. That sign is an old sign that we had right there in Pilar. Our district boundaries are the entirety of Taos County. However, our program monies are excluded from the town of Taos because the town of Taos does not pay the district assessment. So what that means is landowners that reside within the town of Taos are not taxed by the soil and water, therefore they can't benefit from any of the programs I'm about to show you. However, we work with you guys in any way we can. I work with your staff at Parks and Rec on vegetation issues. We've worked before on acequia issues and things of that nature, and we've worked before on water issues, which we'll be getting to at the end of the presentation. This is one of my favorite quotes. This is President Roosevelt. He is actually the person that wrote the Soil and Water Conservation District law, which all the governors of all 50 states adopted. and that's the reason that we have a soil and water conservation district in New Mexico. The history of every nation is eventually written in the way in which it cares for its soil. Very true, very poignant. Soil and water conservation districts came out of the New Deal. They came out of the same programs that did the WPA. The national parks were part of a soil and water conservation district program. And your district was created in 1941 as the Eastern Soil and Water, Taos Soil and Water Conservation District. Then over the years, we became the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District. There's a picture of Mardoqueo Martinez. He was the first supervisor of the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District. This is from the National Archives. This is a photograph, has historical significance because the Harwood Foundation did something that was called the Taos Program, and that allowed the rural people who were poor to be able to talk to the Soil Conservation Service, which was a federal agency back then, and develop their own soil and water conservation district.
Peter?
Yes, sir.
That table in the picture,
Yes, sir.
where might that be located now?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that's probably a Works Program Administration table. As many of you do recall, artisans were funded by the Works Program Administration, and the schools were built by the Works Program Administration, and that's traditional Spanish wood carving. I wouldn't know where the table is. Do you know, Mr. Mayor?
No, but I would love to see that in the old county courthouse, though.
Yes, sir. Just another person that was instrumental in the creating of the district. This is G.B. Gallegos from Cerro, which is just outside of Cuesta. All the locals were, you know, what is this new district all about? They would drive into Taos to come to these meetings to see if this was what they said it would be. There are 47 districts in New Mexico. I'm happy to say that your district you have here in Taos is probably the premier district in the state of New Mexico, if not the Southwest. We have many programs that I'm going to go over with you, and I'll try to speed up now because I know you have a lot on your agenda tonight. They are separate political subdivisions of the state of New Mexico, and they are governed by a board, an elected board. The district was created in 1941. That's a picture, one of my favorite pictures of somebody's hay that got wet in the rain. You have to stand up the bale so you can harvest them. And that's a beautiful picture of our Taos Mountain. This thing's really sensitive. Taos County is about 1.4 million acres. The majority of land within the county is under federal management, either through the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management. However, approximately 550,000 is privately owned. Of that, 62,000 is tribal and 97,000 is state. Taos Soil and Water Conservation District works on the 551,000. It's a nice picture. That's a satellite image of the forest. And you can see the irrigated acres around the middle of it, of the town of Taos, and in the lower portion is the Peñasco irrigated farmland. The district is the only district in New Mexico that is zoned. What that means is that the representatives that sit on our board have to be from within the geographical area that is shown on that map. Unlike other political entities that are zoned by population, these zones are by watershed boundary, because we deal with natural resource issues. So where the watersheds, where the earth created the boundary, that's where we made our zones. Zone 2 is the northern area. Current person in that office is Miss Maureen Johnson from Costilla. The western is Mr. Anthony Benson from just over the gorge, west of the gorge. The southern is Mr. Andy Martinez from Peñasco. And the central has an appointed supervisor by the name of Felix Santisteban from Las Colonias. Another appointed supervisor, Miss Mary Lane Leslie, who some of you might be familiar with, and Stephen Trujillo from Ranchitos. It's one of my favorite pictures. This is our first conservation camp. This started back in 2000. We would take some fifth grade students, take them up to the mountains, try to show them soil and water conservation. It has grown since then, and we reach almost every fifth grade student in the county. Our education coordinator, if you're familiar with him, is Ernie Lopez, who's a retired teacher. He was my science teacher. He instilled in me the ability to achieve and to serve your community. And we have him working with kids nowadays. And we approximately show soil and water conservation principles to about 500 school kids a month throughout the county. This is our Taos High School Envirothon team. These are the kids that we take to compete against other high schools in forestry, wildlife, soils, aquatic biology, and what's called a special topic. This is the team from 3 years ago that went to and represented Taos and the state of New Mexico in the International Envirothon in New Brunswick, Canada. Very proud of our kids, and we're very proud of the legacy that we leave them to care for natural resources. One of the first programs that we do is a fire prevention program. It's a forest thinning program. We have worked extensively in Taos Canyon. Now we have moved efforts into Gallina Canyon. These are dry areas where the development has grown throughout the years, and you have a lot of people in the urban interface, and there's homes up there. And with this drought that we've been in, it's a big concern for the district. We assist homeowners in thinning around their properties so that they can make their homes less susceptible to fire and make the forest less susceptible to fire caused by a homeowner. So this program has been probably in effect since about 2000. This last year we've seen a jump in the requests for assistance, a big jump. So we know that it's on people's minds, and we are there to assist those people in any way we can. It's a picture of a subdivision that I thinned probably back in maybe 2003 in Red River. As you can see, we don't cut all the trees down. We thin them. We thin out those small diameter ladder fuels so that the forest is still healthy, it's still beautiful, but it's less susceptible for fire. If you look at this picture, it's one of my favorite pictures just because you can see that little round image in the trees. Seems like someone's looking down on us smiling. Acequia restoration is what we're known for. We have the premier acequia restoration program in the state of New Mexico, only rivaled by that of the state engineers. We do diversion dams, we do small structures. There are over 63 acequias within Taos Valley alone that we service. Many of those acequias, or a few of them, are within the town boundaries. That's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. We do countywide acequia restoration in the areas of Cuesta, Costilla, Amalia. Southern Taos County would be Peñasco, Llano San Juan, Trampas. There's a picture of some past board members on a diversion dam that we completed in Los Cordovas, probably about 1996.
Mr. Vigil, we have
Yes,
a
sir.
question from
Yes, ma'am.
council.
Peter, with regards to
Yes, sir.
the acequia restoration, is that grant-driven, or how do you guys implement which acequia will be,
Okay,
I guess, revitalized?
that's a good question. Basically, we have an application that they fill out. We go and see every project and we rank them according to resource priority. That way, the squeaky wheel isn't the one that gets the money, it's the one that needs it the most. They're ranked according to a matrix that I developed over 15 years ago that takes into account what their structure looks like now, the irrigated acreage, and the number of people that are affected by the structure, and its strategic location in the overall system. As I said before, Taos Soil and Water Conservation District excludes the town of Taos boundaries. So we have a mill levy in place over the county that funds my salary, my staff's salary, and program monies. We also leverage program monies with the state of New Mexico and/or grants to pay for these projects. Of the utmost importance is that what we want to do is we want to keep every irrigated acre that we can, because they don't make them anymore. Once you lose irrigated land, it don't go back to irrigated land, especially through development. And that's a high priority with us.
So with regards to the omission of the city or the town boundaries, why is that?
The story I heard when I first started working was that at the time that the levy was imposed, the political climate within the town of Taos for a new tax, it wasn't going to fly. especially with some of the business people that were afraid that they would be overtaxed. So it just never went over in the county, but in the city, but it did go over in the county.
Do we have, through our ability, I guess, Rick, and I'm sure you know what I'm alluding to here, the ability to either partner or somehow join forces with Taos Soil and Water Conservation? I mean, it's something I'd like to visit. I'm not sure that we'd be able to do it in the way of a levy or mill levy, but maybe through some type of funding with regards to revitalization of our acequias. It was a long, drawn-out subject that we talked about extensively today, Councilor Hahn. Perhaps maybe you, myself, and Rick, and along with Peter, can sit down and kick around some ideas to work on something like that. If you could sit down with us, I'd love to do that.
That's why I'm here tonight.
Good. So,
a real basic structure that we put in Cerro that divides all the water amongst the people that the acequia does.
Peter,
yes, sir.
Real quick, back to that issue.
Yes, sir.
How much is the mill levy that's in place with the county?
It's 1 mil.
1 mil.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Even small structures that help individual landowners or farmers aren't too small for us. This is a really cool picture because that's my little girl with the stick in the acequia. She is now ready to go to college. So we've been doing this a long time, and we want to make sure that we keep doing it. Here's something that I think you'll like. I started the acequia GIS program back in 2000. Basically, GIS was a new tool. There was no computer images of anything that belonged to entities that weren't part of the state of New Mexico. And we were afraid that the state would be able to map us and maybe assign categorizations to lands and call them fallow and maybe take those water rights. So in a hurry, we sort of put this together. For tonight's presentation, I've delineated the town of Taos. If this is an old boundary, I beg your indulgence, but it's been a long time since we've worked together. So this is the most recent town boundary that I've had in my GIS system. The red lines is the town of Taos boundary inside that polygon in the middle. Those are acequias from the northern part of the town, basically the Rio Pueblo. You'll see that some of them start crossing your boundary, especially Acequia Madre del Pueblo, which comes off the Pueblo near Cachina Lodge, and there's several others that do the same. The blue is Rio Grande del Rancho. That's the Ranchos Acequias. There is some crisscross down towards the bottom of that polygon.
Peter?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor? Real quick, with regards to the acequia mapping that you guys have in place, how far back does your historical data go with regards to flows?
Okay. That data was kept in the Farm Service Agency's archives. And I know you'll be familiar with this because I know that your mom used to work in that aspect, because people still come to my office this day and say that she helped them.
That's good.
And that they want me to help them. And so we have historical data on flows probably going back to the early 1920s. However, budget cuts in the stream gauges, we have piecemeal data probably from the 50s on up. And it's one of the things the district has considered is figuring out how to subsidize a federal agency so that we get some more gauges back in the river and we can see what's really going down there. Aerial imagery as to far as what the crop usage, there is black and white photos at the Farm Service Agency, although the scale is not to this type of accuracy. These are really good aerial photos that we went in, and I think the town might have went in also with the county when we did the first flyover of this aerial imagery, maybe in 2005. So yes, we have some data, it's piecemeal, but it's time to start collecting more data so that we can forecast.
So I guess what I'm looking for at the same point of along the lines of the gauging of the acequias too with regards to flow is also how far back records went at the same point that showed you know, the impediment of some of the acequias.
Okay.
And also what, I mean, foreseeably, based on those gauge flows, what they did with regards to the impact of new construction that happened, let's say, from 1950 up. And I guess what that means, I can see all the intersecting lines, but I'm really curious to see how many of those are still active or usable.
We would love to work with you on that.
Good.
It's probably one of the farthest out projects that I see in my career. I'm sort of at the middle of my career. I don't know how much longer I'll be there, maybe another 15 years, if they have me. But the building envelope is of tremendous concern to us, basically because we don't have any data on it from 1969, when the hydrographic survey was completed by the state of New Mexico and we went into the adjudication, till now. No one's analyzed it. And it is a tremendous project because if you want to think of all the land transfers or land sales that have taken place, as well as the development that has taken place since 1969, you're going to get a tremendous task ahead of you. But I think if we break it off by pieces, we might be able to get some done. And my first piece that I wanted to work in was the Town of Taos. Countywide, this is huge. In fact, even the surrounding areas of Taos, it's huge. But I think we can start somewhere in the Town of Taos and we can get you guys some data as to what the impact is on development as well as climate in the acequia.
Do you keep records along the lines of this at the same point with regards to water right transfer?
You know that we don't. And the reason is we're non-regulatory, we're technical only. Therefore, we leave that up to the Taos Valley Acequia Association and this Office of the State Engineer.
Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Just one more time, Town of Taos boundary, Rio Pueblo Hydrographic Survey, Rio Grande del Rancho Hydrographic Survey, and these are all the irrigated tracts within those areas. So you can see that as of 1969, there are some that lie within the Town of Taos. However, you would have to do some research to see if those water rights hadn't been transferred out of the Town of Taos and maybe out of the landowners and into the Town of Taos for utility hookups. Rangeland restoration. These are the surrounding areas of the Taos Valley and in the high mountain ranges of Costilla and Cuesta. Basically, it's called dryland farming. And this is a picture of a range tour we did with some county commissioners. Virgil Martinez is in that photo. There's Jim Robinson. Those of you know Mr. Robinson. That is a before picture of a meadow in Ventero, which is at the Colorado border near Amalia. And this is what it looks like after restoration. We do like to establish grass because it holds the soil down better. It's better for wildlife and it's better for livestock. Some of you might notice that on a windy day in this drought, you'll get dust everywhere in this town and around it. And grass is probably the best thing to hold down soil. Sage is a medicinal plant. However, it doesn't hold down soil the way grass does, and it doesn't harbor wildlife the way grass does either. I'm not going to debate whether sage was there first or grass was there first because I wasn't around at that time. However, I will state that the diaries of the Spanish explorers when they came to Taos said that the savannas that surrounded the Taos Valley were as high as a stirrup when a man was on a horse. This is another one of my, as if you'll notice, they're all my favorite pictures. Just a restoration as opposed to not a restoration. This is on Felix Santisteban's property out there in going towards the Gorge Bridge, towards where they have the old gravel pit and the mud bogs. And that's what it looks like when you restore it. Although the drought is, for a dryland farmer, no rain, it'll die. Noxious and invasive species. This is a picture facing the tire factory from the highway. I use this as an educational picture because it is a monoculture. What that means is that the invasive species, which in this case is hoary cress or whitetop, has moved in and sent out an endorphin through its roots and killed all the other competing vegetation so that it established itself as a seed source and spreads. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and a weed is in the person's mind. So even a desirable plant someone can think is a weed, and even a bad plant someone can think is a beauty. So we would like to work with you on invasive species issues as well. I have been in communication with some of your staff as to using non-chemical treatments on weeds as far as vinegar. We were looking at maybe using just good old-fashioned high-strength vinegar to control noxious weeds, and that way we wouldn't have any chemicals or herbicides in the arsenal. That hasn't come to fruition yet, but it's one of the things that we've been working on in the past. Stream restoration is the erosion of our streams. We have a program for that. This is out near Pot Creek. Story tells itself. In the old days, and there's a gentleman in Peñasco he's holding the rod for me as I'm doing a survey so we can, document the extent of the erosion. In the old days, we used to do this. This is a gabion structure, which is basically an armoring of the side of the bank. It works well for the landowner. However, as far as the stream's concerned, sometimes you have problems as far as fish habitat. So we don't do that anymore. We do this. I don't know if you can see what that is, but it's a series of posts that are driven into the bed of the stream, probably at a 22-degree angle from the adjacent side of the bend, and they're driven in at an angle with the bottom of the picture having higher posts and the middle of the picture having lower posts. It's almost like a ramp. It's virtually invisible, and it's a highly successful natural restoration strategy for stream erosion. Here's a before picture, and the next picture will be an after picture using those structures. Now, what you'll see is a very jagged stream form put into a nice sinuous type of stream form. The floodplain is healing. Every runoff, they're depositing soil in those willows, and it's getting stronger, and it's actually cementing itself in between those gravels. This is the newest type of science there is as far as stream restoration. Forest Service has adopted it. We've been doing it probably since about 2008. Several projects within Taos County we're doing, and we have expertise with this type of structure. It's just beautiful, just all natural, beautiful. You can't see that ugly rock structure. Water program. Taos Soil and Water Conservation District was the first district, I know for sure in the state of New Mexico or in the Southwest, that took a well inventory of all the water wells voluntarily from private landowners within the county and developed a contour map of where the water table was at the time of the drilling of the well. There's a picture of the first map we ever created. That little inset in the middle is the Taos city limits, more or less, but we have done the whole county. To date, we've sampled probably over 1,500 wells throughout the county with their depths. We took it a step further and did quality analysis on those wells, so now we know where the anomalies are as to water quality. We're doing research now in the Arrondo and the Des Montes area because they have uranium problems. We're trying to figure out why the uranium's there. And that's where we're devoting our resources into now. There's approximately 22 maps of water quality that the district has come up with, anything ranging from uranium to hardness to selenium to arsenic to fluoride, anything like that. And we have that data, and we have experts on staff that if anyone would have a water question that maybe an engineer wouldn't have an idea of, we have the local picture, and we'd like to work with you on that as well. It's just a close-up of the Taos Valley. The red lines that are going up and down are volcanic faults. We were the first to propose that volcanic faults compartmentalized the water vector flow within the valley as it drains to the Rio Grande, and this is published in the New Mexico Geological Society. Another close-up of just the dots are wells, and the red dots are springs, and the blue lines are water level contours according to a elevation above sea level, and then a up and down sort of fuchsia kind of line is a volcanic fault. I thank you, and if there's any way we can assist you, we're here to assist you. We're not here asking for any money. We're here asking for cooperation and to let us assist you with any problems or any questions you might have. Thank you.
Councilor Hahn?
Mr. Vigil,
Where is the office located?
Oh,
it's at the Ag Center.
yes, the Juan I. Gonzalez Agriculture Building behind Sagebrush Inn.
Mr. Vigil, I
Yes,
want to
sir.
thank you for taking the time and giving us this fabulous presentation. And I want to thank you also because finally I have met you. I've been trying to find you for such a long time, and life happens. I think Councilman Gonzalez has a fabulous idea. And pending the mayor and fellow councilwomen and councilman's approval, I would like to ask Abigail if she could please contact your office, and let's begin these discussions at your office post haste. It's extremely timely. And I'm just grateful for your presence, for your family. You have a cousin named Bill, and he and I started a little union together back in the day. So, La Familia. But I think, Andrew, if you don't mind me saying, and with the mayor's approval, this is very timely. And Abigail, if you wouldn't mind, if you could contact Senor Vigil and then Andrew and I, and let's get this thing going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Peter, thank you. Thank you for all you do in the community, and it's been great working with you on the other side of the county. So, and appreciate it. I'm glad you were able to bring this presentation, and we will use you. Thank you.
Thank you. We are at your service.
Thank
Yeah,
you, sir.
thank you, Peter.
You know, before we go on, I think Mr. Mayor, wanted to pick on Mr. Landgraf. And, you know, you bring a lot to the table. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are and how maybe Taos High Tigers and maybe clubs over there, conservation clubs, anything like that, might help us, enable us, not only with the arboring event that we saw earlier from Mr. Jones, I think it was, but now this event. What are your thoughts?
Actually, our Envirothon team did very well this year, and I could definitely contact them and see, you know, what they would be willing to bring to the table. And I think that for the most part, most of our students are people were really happy about Earth Day today. You know, we're trying to get some trees planted on Friday and try and get all that stuff going. And I could definitely talk to the sponsor and all the students that are in Envirothon and see what they would be willing to bring to the table.
That'd be great. And again, Abigail, can I pick on you too? Can we start using Abigail as our source, Councilman Gonzalez and Mr. Landgraf? And is that okay with you, Miss Abigail? I didn't ask, but could we do that? Thanks a lot. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anything else from council? If not, we'll move on to our, we have a public hearing, and so next on the agenda, we'll open a public hearing for ordinance 1407, and I just kind of want to set a few ground rules for the public hearing. You know, basically, the parties and witnesses will be identified. All persons who expect to offer testimony will be sworn in, and the testimony will be given under oath. All persons offering testimony will be subject to cross-examination by other parties. Please remember that the purpose of cross-examination is to ask questions and to solicit relevant facts from the witness, not to be argumentative or to state your own opinion. And the council intends to limit testimony to information relevant to the matter being considered. And we may limit And I will limit to the, if it's being, repeated over and over again. And before we kind of get started here on the public hearing, I just want to make sure that council that is presently seated, that we don't have any conflict of interest at hand here. So if not, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I hear none, conflict of interest. So again, do we want to start with a staff presentation, or do we want to start with a presentation by the applicants, or you will be making it?
Either way, we can do it either way.
Okay, we can go with the staff presentation first?
Okay. So the first, there's actually two possible rezonings. So the first one is Ordinance 14-07, which is consideration and possible approval to change the zoning on approximately 47.7 acres located at 303 West Roy Road, east of the Salazar extension. And the zone change request is the change from C1, which is neighborhood commercial, C2, which is general commercial, and ARO, which is agricultural, recreation, open space, flood zone, to RA20, which is residential agricultural within the town of Taos. The applicants are here. Prior to July 2002, the subject parcel was zoned agricultural. The zoning was changed to allow for commercial development. There was some interest in the land for commercial development, but nothing actually occurred. So the applicant is actually requesting to zone the property from commercial now to residential. I have included the staff reports in your packets, which will become part of the record. And there are 6 criteria that you have to consider when you're looking at a rezoning. And those 6 criteria are actually on page 14 of the staff report. And there's also on the staff report on pages 1 and 2 an aerial photograph that kind of shows the location of the parcel. And then on the next page, there's another map that shows the zoning. So you'll see that if you go to the second page of the staff report, that there's kind of again where the parcel is. The 6 criteria are on page 14. They must be used to establish the findings of fact in order to support the approval or denial of the applicant's request for a rezoning. So the first criteria is the amendment is consistent with the direction and intent of the Town of Taos' master plan. And our Town of Taos master plan is the Vision 2020. And there's quite a few objectives and goals within that plan that support this rezoning. Staff's comments are in italics. The applicants are actually in regular font. The second criteria is the amendment is consistent with the purpose of the Town of Taos' zoning regulations. Again, this land was agricultural before 2002. They rezoned it to commercial. Currently, there's quite a few vacant commercial properties on Paseo del Pueblo Sur and Paseo del Cajon. Even though this land is in the middle of the 2 areas that are zoned commercial, this is a huge parcel. And so staff feels that the intent and the purpose of the zone for residential is consistent with the purpose of the zoning regulations. Then the third criteria is this amendment to the title is consistent with the existing land use in the affected neighborhood. Again, the neighborhood zoning is agricultural, commercial, and manufacturing. And because this is such a large piece of land, we feel that it's consistent. This criterion is satisfied. And the benefit to the neighborhood will outweigh any potential adverse impact on the surrounding properties. Again, it will benefit the neighborhood by increasing agricultural and residential uses in the area. It also allows for open space and encourages agricultural, the historic traditions of Taos, and other economic development opportunities that are not the normal economic, but could allow for additional farming. And that's currently what the land is pretty much being used for. It's just that it's zoned commercial. The fifth criterion is the amendment to this title will not create danger to the public health, safety, or welfare, or not cause an extraordinary public expense or create a nuisance. Again, this zone change will not create any danger to public health, safety, or welfare. And then the sixth is the amendment is justified by the fact that the original zoning was in error, by a change in condition in the vicinity, or by a change in the Town of Taos overall development policy. Staff doesn't think that the zoning was in error. Times change. The economy's not what it was when they rezoned to commercial, and so we feel that this criterion is satisfied. So that's basically the summary of the criterion. I'd like to have our staff report as part of the record, also the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval, and thus it's before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hahn?
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. And yes, times have changed, but please educate this poor blue-collar dude. What does RA20 mean?
RA is agricultural residential, and you have to have a minimum lot size of 20 acres.
Per home?
Right.
So we're looking at 2 homes here. And then, of course, further down, we have another 26 acres.
Yes, included in the staff report is actually on page 10,
Okay.
Out of the code, the intent and purpose, and then it talks about principal uses
And I think
and
it's just...
secondary.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was very impolite of me.
That's fine.
So if we're going agricultural, where's the water coming from?
That you should ask the applicant. I know
Okay.
that, you know, a lot of it's sagebrush currently.
And I'll do that when the applicant presents. Thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll ask the applicant if he wanted to do a presentation.
My name's
Go ahead.
Joni Cunningham.
How are you doing this evening?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please.
2 things. Joni,
Oh,
I'm going to ask you to speak up, but also you're going to have to be sworn in.
exactly. I was
Oh,
going to say.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. And I do have your name for the record. Please repeat after me. I'm sorry. Please answer these questions. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
And again, just one more time, your name for the record.
Joni Cunningham.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm sorry if there's any repetition. Martha did such a good job that it's basically a lot of what I was going to say. So I also wanted to go over the criteria for a rezone. And the following criteria will be used by the Commission or Historic Preservation Commission for the review and approval of an amendment to this title for recommendation to the Town Council. Number 1, the amendment is consistent with the direction and intent of the existing Town of Taos Master Plan. Answer, yes, RA20 zone is consistent with the existing Town of Taos Master Plan because it meets the criteria of the first 3 goals listed in the Vision 2020 Master Plan, titled Our Goals for the Year 2020.
Trouble hearing you.
Really? I'm going to have a hard time here. The first 3 goals listed in the Vision 2020 Master Plan is land use, agricultural and open space preservation, and economic development. So going to the first goal, quote, land use, growth and development protect and enhance the natural resources, unique landscape, historic character, distinct neighborhoods, and economic opportunities of the Taos Valley. Answer: with an RA20 zone, we have mowed to eradicate the sagebrush in order to bring back the native grass pasture lands. This protects and enhances the natural resources, unique landscape, and historic character of the Taos Valley vegetation. And in regard to the trees, we mowed around the trees and left the trees, so that's nice for Earth Day. The second goal listed, quote, agricultural and open space preservation. Taos' quality of life is maintained by preserving and enhancing our cherished open spaces and agricultural lands. Answer: since this land was residential or agricultural before July of 2002, restoring it back to its use is, in effect, preserving our cherished open spaces and agricultural lands in order that Taos' quality of life is maintained. And then the third goal listed, quote, economic development. The Taos economy is diverse, self-sustaining, and provides rewarding jobs that pay well. Answer: producing diverse products for local and regional markets, creating rewarding jobs, and generating gross receipts taxes will support the economic development of Taos. Also, because agriculture is noted as a focus area in the 2013 Taos Economic Development Action Plan, RA20 is appropriate for this economic plan as well. And so the second criteria, the amendment is consistent with the purpose and intent of the Town of Taos zoning regulations. RA20 zone is consistent with the purpose of the zoning regulations because the purpose of zoning regulations is to separate different land uses so that the uses are compatible with each other. This property is located in a rural area of Taos characterized by low-density population and large parcels of land. The third criteria, the amendment to this title is consistent with the existing land use in the affected neighborhood. And if I could have permission to approach, I made some packets with a map and support letters and pictures.
Please. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I wanted to just have a visual.
Did you need it? Did you need it for right now?
I can talk until. Oh, do you want to keep it?
For the record, yeah.
Can I give it to you after?
you're finished.
I thought there were 5 of you, so I even had extras. So our farm is the acreage noted in yellow, and then the existing zones are in the green inside that yellow, and the neighbors are to the north of the farm is the Taos Academy. Okay. And behind this map is a support letter from Taos Academy supporting agriculture on this property. Even though they're supporting an ordinance to allow agricultural activities in commercial property, that didn't go over so well, so now we're rezoning. So these letters, in essence, are supporting agricultural. And actually, the Taos Academy has integrated our farm into their curriculum. They come over and conduct classes on farming and compost, and when we have animals, animal farming. So now to the west of the property are multiple grazing areas for animals, and the rest is pretty much self-explanatory. There's support letters behind and also photos of our farm.
Is that it on your part?
And then, sorry, number 4, the benefit to the neighborhood will outweigh any potential adverse impact upon the surrounding properties. The benefits far outweigh the potential adverse impact. In fact, since the property is so big, there will be no adverse consequences. However, the benefit of maintaining and beautifying this property will be an asset for the neighborhood and for Taos. The educational opportunities and local products will help draw economic synergy to the area and be a great benefit to our youth. And then number 5, the amendment to this title will not create a danger to the public health, safety, or welfare, nor cause an extraordinary public expense or create a nuisance. RA20 zoning will not create a danger to public health, safety, welfare, public expense, or create a nuisance. In fact, the products will help to improve public health by providing local, fresh, healthy, nutritious, homegrown food. This will increase the welfare of Taos citizens and neighboring communities with no public expense. And then last, number 6, the amendment is justified by the fact that the original zoning was an error by change in condition of in the vicinity or by change in the Town of Taos overall development policy. Yes, in our opinion, changing the original agricultural zone to commercial was a mistake because the change in the Town of Taos overall development policy midstream in the commercial development of our property made it impossible to carry out the purpose of changing the zone in the first place. So we are asking you to approve the rezoning.
Thank you, and appreciate it. And Martha, a recommendation from staff and recommendation from the P&Z board was,
Yes.
and I did read it, but I just want that.
Yes, staff recommended approval to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission anonymously approved it too, with recommending it to come before this body, because that's the process.
Right. Councilor Hahn?
Ms. Cunningham, thank you. And Mr. Cunningham, it's been a long time. It's good to see you again.
Hold on one second.
Public input first.
Okay, yeah. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak for or against? Mr. Silva, please come forward, and you'll have to be sworn in. Martha, you might, I don't know. Okay.
Please state your name for the record.
Michael Silva.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to just thank you for allowing me to speak today, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm here today to go on record to express my support for the applicant. My family and I have about 10 acres right to the north across the street from Canyon West. And I see what they've been doing out there. They've been working hard to try to mow down the sage. I see the grass coming up beautifully. Earlier today, we heard a presentation from Peter Vigil talking about what might have been at one point. And in fact, my great-grandmother used to tell me when I was a child that she remembers those days when the valley was green with grass. And I could see a little bit of that green coming through, and it's just a joy to see. And so I commend you all. I think what you're doing is fine. It's going to be good for the community, and I'm here just to express my support. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate it. Do you have any questions for me? No. Thank you.
Come on.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else in the public wish to speak for or against?
I'm Robin Collier.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do. What I think is amazing about this is we're taking commercial zoning and putting it back into agriculture. And I want to commend the Cunninghams and what they've done on that land. If we could see more of this where we take commercial land and restore it to agriculture, there'd be hope for Taos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Council, do we need to close the public hearing before we? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing then, and we'll turn to Councilor Hahn.
Ms. Cunningham, thank you. And Mr. Cunningham, it's great to see you again. It's been a long time. I'm so glad that the property that you and your family have had for so long is being used, and I really, really, really hope this works. I have a question. How about the water?
We have a well on the property with 8.5 acre feet that we're using.
I'll further on that for you. We have 20 acre feet of water in trust with the town that is being considered to go into that hole depending on how things go.
And Mr.
We have plenty of water.
Mr. Cunningham, if you just come up and, for the record, state your name and being sworn in, just a proper.
Do you swear
Name
or
is
affirm
Roy
that-
Cunningham, and I do swear to tell the truth. And yes, to further the water question for you, we have 20 acre feet of water that's in trust with the town of Taos. There will undoubtedly, as always, be transfer problems, blah, blah, blah. Anybody who knows water rights knows about that, but we have plenty of water to succeed in anything we need to do down there. We are also using, on all of our vegetables especially, very conservative use of it through drip system, which is not easy to maintain out there. Anything further?
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Roy.
P&Z concurs?
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
Councilor Peralta?
Mr. Mayor, Martha, I was looking at the minutes from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and only one person came forward to speak, but the minutes don't indicate whether that person was for or against, or the type of comment that they may have had. Do you remember?
The planning and zoning meeting, they were for it.
So yes, the person that came forward did speak for it.
I just pointing that out because that should be in the record in the minutes, that the person's comments were either for or against or whatever. Maybe they were talking about New Year's Day. I don't know. But just for our purposes in looking at this, it would be nice to see.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I would just like to commend the Cunninghams. I had discussions with them last year about this project and trying to figure out a way to make this a project that would benefit the community. And so I'm glad to see that we found a way to make this work for you and for the community. So,
And thank you for your help.
you're welcome.
And I'd love to see, you already said that you're working with the Taos Academy, and the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps is right there too. I think that would be wonderful opportunities for both those educational opportunities.
I should have said we have plans with collaboration with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps also for educational programs.
Thank you. Councilor?
I just want to commend you as well, just because of the fact that if you'd have heard the discussions we had today, they were primarily based around the fact of what you're exactly talking about is water right and the consumable water right that's typically tied and associated with properties, and the fact that those water rights inevitably go up with regards to commercial construction or commercial opportunity. So to remove this out of commercial and put this into an RA20, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's something that I think is monumental because we're not going to see this happen every day.
It's usually the other way around.
It is. It does go the other way around. So much like former Councilor Silva alluded to, that it's a great thing for this community. And with that, Mr. Mayor, if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion that we approve
I got
the
a
item.
comment too.
Well, we'll go under discussion.
You want to
Make a motion that we approve.
And then we have a second,
I'll second.
and then we have a second, and then we have further discussion.
I just wanted also to say that I think that's wonderful. It's an example of what can be and what should be, something that was in the past that we can bring to the present, something I envisioned in my mind the very last time that I ran for council, but you're proving it's possible, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
We appreciate your encouragement and support.
Thank you. So we do have a motion, and we do have a second. Any further discussion? Staff, any further discussion? Not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Absolutely.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
So thank you. So we'll go ahead and open a second public hearing.
Oh, and that was yes, not an abstain.
For ordinance 1408, amending the zoning map, and Ms. Perkins will turn to you, and we'll use the same rules that we used before on the previous.
Right. This is consideration and possible approval to rezone approximately 26 acres on the corner of Paseo del Pueblo Sur and Paseo del Cañon West from C2, which is general commercial, to RA20, residential agricultural. And again, there's a staff report for this, and the same criteria have to be addressed, and I'm recommending that my staff report be entered into the record. The criteria is the same for every rezoning, and the staff report is pretty much the same as the previous staff report. These two parcels are actually adjacent to each other. So on page 1 and page 2 of the staff report, you'll see a map, and this is where the intersection is, kind of across from the the Tourist Information Center. And so with these two parcels together, that's a very large tract. So I don't think there's any need to go through the criteria again, since they're pretty much the same. The staff had recommended approval as long as the previous case was approved. Planning and zoning also recommended approval as long as the previous case was approved. So it's now before you for your consideration. Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Actually, my whole presentation was really for both properties. If you look on the map right here in the corner where it says C2, 28 acres, that's the property we're talking about now. But this whole yellow is the farm, so everything I said in the prior presentation applies to this piece also.
Okay. All right. So is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak for or against? Mr. Silva? You have to be sworn in.
My name is
I'm
Mike
sworn
Silva. I
in.
swear to tell the truth. I'll keep it short and sweet. Again, here to go on record to express my support for this applicant.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Seeing none, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion, if any? Please. Mr. Landgraf.
I saw the letter and everything that you're doing with Taos Academy, and as being a former student of there, I think that it's just wonderful that everyone gets to participate, and we're showing kids that sustainability is possible and that it's really the future on this planet, and we all need to be sustainable. And it's just a perfect way to show that real world applicable. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Please.
Is this something that the community is going to be able to help you with and join
Yes,
in? Maybe we can get
absolutely.
the kids off of the video games?
Yes, we'd like to expand our educational programs to include any public or private school within the community that would like to take part in our activities. But we also have a vision of bringing the community in to help with the farm, whether it be that they get paid in food or if they just want to be a volunteer. We'd like to use this project to help unite Taos into a common, really good cause.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Landgraf?
At the last council meeting, there was actually a lot of talk about community gardens. I think at least 3 people were talking about community gardens, and that's a great way to, if we can connect with those people and get the word out there that this is going on, it would just be wonderful for everyone to be able to participate.
It's a great idea.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. It'd be great to see that. So, any further discussion? If not, call for the vote.
Councilmember Peralta.
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you.
Martha?
And can we get the lights turned back on up here? It's getting a little dark. Can't see. Okay. So go on to matters from staff. Financial update, presentation of the monthly financial report for the period ending March 13th, 2014. Marietta, is that going to be up here too?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Unless he wants, no. I think that's in your packages is the financial report. Just to go over a summary on the revenues. The gross receipts tax for March was down 1.99% from 2012-13. That's March's receipts and January's activity. This was the first decrease, the first month decrease since the beginning of the fiscal year. So we've been doing very well, with the exception of this 1 month. The biggest categorical decreases were in utilities at $19,000 and other services $13,208. Increases were in construction $13,830 and unclassified establishments $9,506. Year-to-date growth is 4.11% over 2012-13, and in October we projected a 1.8 increase in gross receipts tax. We have received October's gross receipts tax already. That was up, I didn't bring it, but approximately 8% for the month of October. So we're looking at a 4% increase through the end of the fiscal year, and my projections on the numbers reflect that. So those are little highlights on the revenues. And another thing that came in was our small cities distribution. Usually last 10 years it was $35,000. It jumped up to $90,000. Verified that with the state that we will be getting that next year, so we will be budgeting that a figure of $90,000 for next fiscal year. Expenditures, I've requested the departments to give me their projections. We're through 3 quarters of the year, 1 quarter left, and so each department gave projections through the end of the year. With that, we look about returning $200,000 at the end of the fiscal year, and those are projections. Hopefully they stay to them. Give 5% up or down is pretty reasonable between the departments. And with that information, our ending balance is projected to be $2,043,000, which equates to around 70 days right now. And that's with the jump of the gross receipts tax throughout the whole 9 months and the decrease in expected expenditures.
Marietta?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, real quick, with the 70 days, with us being 2 days over the 2/12, is it a feasible time to start looking at maybe not being so conservative with the reserve? I mean, and I'm not saying drop below the 60 days, but definitely to a point where we don't start accruing so much that we start, I guess, holding up additional projects. And I look to that, Mr. Mayor, with regards to some of the issues that we've had, like the restrooms at the Kit Carson Park and, you know, those type of projects, and if there's excess in funds moving forward now that we're getting into summer.
Councilor Peralta?
Answer a question.
Along those same lines, I would look at some of that excess revenue that we're getting in as a one-time expenditure towards some of the improvements or maintenance projects that we have going on, and having staff make recommendations to the council as to how some of that can be spent. Looking at, it was about 2% over budget
On
what we're making this year over what we
actually
budgeted.
4%, right?
4%.
4% over
4%.
budget?
Actually, it's 4% on just the grocery receipts tax, so probably roughly about 2.5 total
On the overall.
So we have probably about $250,000 over the 2/12.
I'm thinking 1.2, about 1.2 million over the 1/12, 2/12. So 1/12 is equal to roughly about $876,000.
So 2/12 would be about $1.7 million.
Yes.
So that would leave, that's why I'm saying it would leave about $250,000 in extra generator revenue that could be budgeted towards one-time expenditures, not anticipating that that would be a recurring revenue next year.
Right, that could be possible, but, you know, I think, I'm just looking at the manager, because we've had the discussion on what our reserve is going to be, or what we're going to recommend to the council for that reserve, and I'll sort of yield to Rick on that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to go by where we talked about in this fiscal year as to where we wanted to get to, and that was 2/12.
Right,
So leaving that alone,
okay,
and nothing else happens in the last 2 months
pretty much.
of this budget year, except it be neutral, we would have about $250,000 over anticipated revenues as to where we want to be that could be reallocated as a one-time expenditure.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it could be more than that, but I'm just saying that would be a conservative figure.
Mr. Bellis?
Mr. Mayor, Council, staff would like to hold off on how we look at that money until we make a full budget presentation to you. We received information today that medical costs alone went up 19% to the town, 16% to the employees, so our share of that is over $238,000. We've had some other costs that we're still waiting for some information on, such as the insurance. But total departmental requests at this point, as were presented to the council, and with the changes that have taken place, would mean that we're currently $656,000 on our July 1 budget over our projected revenues. And that is without taking a look at our ICIP, which did not include previously all anticipated expenses for maintenance and repairs, renovations of buildings, facilities. So we'd like to present a more comprehensive approach to our financial picture before we commit any of that reserve, excess reserve.
And I'm not asking it to be committed. I'm just asking the council to look at the possibility of not, because one of the things we have to look at on the insurances and that sort of thing, those are reoccurring expenditures, so they have to be built into a long-term budget. And I'm looking at monies that would not be put into a long-term budget because they're excess revenues in anticipation that they're not going to be coming in the next year or two. If we look at a balanced zero budget.
Okay, right.
But, I mean, looking at that and then looking at your concerns as well, Rick, I'm not in any way questioning it. I'm just saying I think that's a conservative figure that could meet some of the needs that Commissioner or council member, I'll get the words right sooner or later, Han would like to look at in some of those repairs that we need to have desperately.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Gonzalez?
Rick and Marietta, with regards to the 19% increase in healthcare benefits to the city, where are we at with regards to RFP on that stuff, or we are just on a renewal with whoever? How does that work? And I guess what I'm alluding to is that 19% is a huge hit and not something I'm comfortable with if we're going to stay with whoever provides that, if it's municipal league or whoever negotiates.
No, it's with the state of New Mexico risks and risk management.
We're not tied to staying there though, right? I mean, we have the ability to outsource.
Yes.
Outside. Because I guess I have huge heartburn with 19%. Because it's not just imposed upon us, it's imposed upon our employees as well.
And it's a risk pool, so it's sort of like the municipal league that you pull all the communities together, and that's usually the best bang for your buck sometimes. But we have not gone out to do an RFP for medical services or other insurance costs. We have the insurance costs through the municipal league and the risk management through the state for medical.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I just look at a possibility of giving our employees an 8% raise with a 19% insurance hike. 16. Well, some at an 8%. I'm not saying across the board. are most disadvantaged. I mean, and that's going to all come back on pay plan too, but I guarantee you our employees aren't getting a 19% increase. So.
And Councilor, we've been seeing this across the state, that insurance premium since the Obamacare or whatever kind of care it's called. It seems like it increased everybody else's premiums.
Because everybody else is paying now.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, Councilor Hahn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, 19%. And as a social worker who does a lot of billing, I'm not surprised at all with this jacked premium. And it is jacked, and there's lots of actuarial reasons for that, so they would have us believe. But as I was reviewing the budget, Mrs. Fambro, and thank you so much. I'm just very grateful for your tenacious efforts. I just had a couple of maybe simplistic questions. The facilities fund, year-to-date, had expended 25% of its budgeted amount, and we have just a couple of months left to go. I think there were some other anomalies like that also in the budget, but I didn't write them down. And I started thinking about it, and I just want to confer, maybe it's more appropriate with the manager, that as we are really getting a handle on all of the wreckage that we have to repair, are some of these monies purposefully just not being sequestered isn't the right word, but just set in reserve until we get a game plan set so that we can move forward in as bold a fashion as a crippled town can?
Oh, that was a loaded question.
Well, I mean, I'm just noticing, we all know that we have facilities in disrepair, and so I'm just noticing that correlation.
Right. A couple of things here. One, and Steve, feel free to chime in, but certainly as some of these budgets in regards to roads, when we came in, we noticed there was a backlog. But some of that is just the construction season, and some of it's how the funding comes in. We may have the contract, we may have it budgeted, but we're waiting for the state portion, or we're waiting for engineering approvals or environmentals. In regards to the buildings, I'll leave Steve to answer that, but in general, I do think some of this is attributable to the fact that we do need a full-time procurement officer. I hear that from a number of department heads, that there's a delay in the process because of that. Some of that is because we've changed personnel. Some of it is that at maybe finance department's own initiative or mine or the prior managers, there's certainly more of an emphasis right now by the current governor on procurement procedures, and so we are careful that everything is where it's supposed to be. But in regards to your specific question about facilities, and by the way, we are ready. In fact, I think we may have gone out today for the procurement officer, but I'll let Steve address the facilities question.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For our capital expenditures, most of our projects are seasonally related. They're with the roofs, with any kind of repair of the buildings. We couldn't do it during the winter. So we've got a number of projects going on now that haven't been paid for, but they're either in the works or will start soon. We have a new roof going on the airport terminal building that's in progress now. We will, within the next couple of weeks, start a HVAC replacement in the library. That's a large chunk of our capital money, and then we'll follow that with a roof replacement, a partial roof replacement on the library roof where that HVAC system's going in. We've got a vehicle that's in procurement. That's a fairly large chunk of our money. We have a project that is grant funded for bathrooms at Kit Carson Park. We had a meeting with Miranda today to go over all our capital programs and see where we are. The park restrooms, we met with a GSA contractor today, and I think we're on track for getting that going. I don't know if we'll complete that within this fiscal year by the end of June, but we'll get it done, I think, by the end of the summer.
Steve, with regards to that bathroom,
Yes,
that is a permanent structure, right? There's not a porta potty.
It is a prefab building that will be permanently placed.
Okay.
It could be, we had a good conversation with a guy today. It's either going to be 3 single units, a double and a single, or 1 or 2 really minimal 2 units. So depending on what we can spend our money on is what we'll go with.
Would you want to clarify that a little bit more, Counselor?
Well,
I mean,
for me, it's not the structures that we have in place now that the Little League kids are downwind from a pretty
those existing
good
restrooms
smell.
will stay there. The plumbing's capped off, and we're using them for storage. The built facilities, the restrooms that are no longer used as restrooms, are being used as storage. What we're going to put in is a prefab units that aren't tied into plumbing. That'll have a vault underneath. They're modern day, state of the art buildings, and they shouldn't give off an odor.
Shouldn't.
They have a vent stack, and I mean if you've been down by Pilar along the river, the state park there, it's those same type of units that we'll be putting in.
I guess my question, what's our offset cost between that and the building that we have there, doing a revamp in there and actually having a wash facility for our,
right.
My biggest thing is that we have kids from 4 to 13 during the summer months that highly utilize those baseball fields. And
so there'll be wash stations in them. The reason we're going with prefab is because we have grant money. Most of it is grant money. It's $50,000 is grant money, and it doesn't allow for renovation. We went back and forth. That's one of the holdups, is we were trying to get clarification on what exactly we could use that money for. The additional $19,000 is insurance money that we got from a restroom that burnt. So we can use the $19,000 as we wish, but the largest portion of that money is grant funded, and it states specifically that we have to either build new, which $50,000 won't get us much, or we go with prefab.
so then my next question, Mr. Mayor, is with regards to the roofs. Having Julie Scancy on board and her having a GB, is it 96 or 98?
98, I think it is.
That, to me, would serve as beneficial as opposed, we all know what happens when government goes out to bid. Right. We get government bids back on roofing projects. Having an individual within our staff that has a GB 98 that can maybe oversee a crew, right, or even 2, to complete some of these projects without the detriment of having to go out for a bid that's inflated by 75%, I think would maybe serve us. I'd rather hire people within the city, even if they're temp employees throughout the summer, to assist Ms. Scancy in completing those projects. Because when you look at a construction crew staff, much like mine, much of my employees are seasonal anyway. But I provide jobs. So I guess I look at it from the standpoint, Mr. Mayor, that are we more beneficial in being able to complete a roofing project at $200,000 as opposed to $800, and employ a few people along the way without overlining the pockets of an outside contractor.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, the one caution I would put on that is that we take a long-term view of that benefit of a short-term project, and that is that the cost to the town in terms of unemployment compensation and our rating it can be a real headache when we want to delve in a lot of seasonal employees.
But could it be to the tune of $600,000 difference on one project? I mean, I'm looking at just some of these projects that we're looking at alone, much like Youth and Family Center, for example, which that's tabbed us at over $1 million for roof repair.
Well,
what would change between a GB98 in-house to a GB98 on the billables?
If you ask me, we need another one. I mean, that would be a full-time job. And Julie is also responsible for maintaining all of the other facilities that we have. The staff we have, Julie, I think, has the capability of overseeing that type of project, but our other staff, while they're good, they're just not roofers.
So can we not go out for that?
Well, so what we do now is we put it out to contract and she oversees them. So what I think we are getting with having Julie in place is someone who's keeping an eye on them and making sure they're doing it right. So the TCA roof, I think, is a good example. We replaced that early this year, and it's a spectacular roof.
But that wasn't done. That wasn't in-house, though, right?
No, sir, it wasn't. It was a GSA contract.
And that's my concern. Even as a GSA applied vendor myself, I'm tied to Davis and Bacon. I'm tied to the bonding and everything else that comes along with it, which are all added unnecessary costs.
True.
And just a note on that, I think
to the extent of private,
I think we looked at that, and I think there's a difference between having employees build projects versus just employees and their workflow. Workman's comp, the liability to cover a crew in that kind of sense. The wage rates when public works projects comes to an X amount, then it turns into a different thing. So I think that's the problem of having just regular line employees do crew building jobs to that
so
extent.
maybe we leave the bigger projects out to a GB98 and outside GB, but we take on a lot of the more in-house stuff within ourselves. I'd rather see one full-time crew that's just dedicated to that on staff time plus material, as opposed to staff time plus an inflated number plus material.
Honestly, with the staff we have 5 people plus Julie Scansey, so we have 6 people. We have 69 facilities, plus they help work on parks. Given our regular workload, they wouldn't have the time. We use them, and our staff almost never before been used for building projects, and since we've got Julie on board, she's gotten them involved in them. A good example is the build out of the space in Town Hall for when we moved the police in. In the past, we would have contracted that out, but in this case, we used our own staff. But it's just the time that it takes. If we use them for that, then we don't have people to do the maintenance that we have them doing on a daily basis now. I'll talk to Julie about it tomorrow.
I'm just looking for solutions that don't cost us an extra 35–40%.
Actually, we have an issue with the water leak across the road, and we're thinking of doing that in-house as well, because the quotes we've got for the replacement from outside vendors are just astronomical.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, long term, I think that after touring a number of the facilities that we own, we need a facilities assessment, and quite honestly, there's a question whether we should be in the business of owning and operating some of the properties we do, because it's a losing proposition. We're collecting little or no rent, and we have substantial depreciation in the properties that results, as was in the case of the hall across here, a $20,000 water leak that's leaking 60,000 gallons of water. And we're either going to have to take the route you're talking about, which is to put on full-time construction crews, not to do new construction, but just maintenance on these buildings, or make some determination as to whether they serve a function, an economic function any longer to the taxpayers in the town.
And I can agree with that. I mean, for me, I would say dropping dead weight in buildings that we're not using or aren't producing for us. And I know we're definitely not in the business of making money, but we're not in the business of dishing it out by the thousands either. So just an evaluation would be good.
One thing I'd like to say, just while we're on the subject of capital projects, is that please understand, what we're doing right now is just the most dire projects that need to be done. There is no current schedule of regular capital schedule of replacement of major things like roofs and HVAC units and other major cost expenses that are capital as far as facilities go. Right now, we're just fixing the things that are in the worst condition, and there is no regular set schedule, and there is no funding. I mean, each year, this current year, we had to take whatever we could and then do the best with it that we could. So,
I'm just saying, if we're banking
I think
on
the idea
some
of an
bigger
assessment is
projects,
very good.
you know, if we're gonna, you know, find a way to get the Youth and Family Center roof in check, I would look that we do it, you know, propose to do it in-house and weigh the cost benefit between that and going out to bid. I mean, I know even though we go out to RFP, we're not bound by it.
Right.
You know, and so for me, it just kind of makes things a little more competitive that, you know, even outside contractors just don't look at us as a cash cow and say, oh, all I got to do is be the lowest bidder. I don't got to be the best bidder.
We can only spend as much money as we have, so.
Yeah.
You know, Steve, I think you and Julie and the staff do a great job.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful. And we rely on your guidance. And same for you and your department, Marietta. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Marietta, I just want to mention one thing on the vehicle replacements. I would, hopefully we get a procurement officer, and I would love to see them come up to bid, and let's not go with the state contracts if we possibly can, because, again, we're shelling people out to go take a vehicle all the way to Albuquerque to get maintenance done on it, on the, if it breaks down, it's still under warranty. I mean, it costs us staff time, it costs us, you know, somebody to go down there and sit with a vehicle. Sometimes they can't get it out in a day, it's a day and a half. It's two people down there, one to take him, one to bring him back. And, you know, we need to see if we can't start buying local. The GRT on a $25,000 vehicle that stays within our community is big.
There's
there's not any tax on that?
No, it's just sales tax.
GRT.
Mr. Mayor, not,
Yeah, well, I mean,
Good.
but on the other end, there is the parts and the maintenance.
Correct.
So,
Mr. Mayor, the other side to that, Marietta, is that possibly forming within the northern communities, even Espanola North, to start even just a collective bargaining to go out to other municipalities and say, are you looking for something at this time? Because we're going out to bid on XYZ vehicle through XYZ vendor. I mean, there's always power in numbers, so.
We'll look into it because we do have Steve actually has a vehicle that he wants to purchase, so we'll do our best to do the best obtainable local price possible.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I have a comment, but I want to take us back a step to something that you mentioned a little earlier. You're talking about an insurance increase of 19%, and I was wondering if we could look into something that would be beneficial, like a wellness program that would benefit the Taos, that would drop the insurance rates.
We'll look at, do you know more?
Actually, there was a meeting earlier this week between Steve Archuleta and myself, in which we're soliciting a proposal that we could then submit to the insurance carriers to see if they would absorb the full cost of that.
That sounds good.
go ahead.
We could set a goal. Councilmember Peralta said he'd get a tattoo if the employees lost X amount of weight.
I'll shave my head.
You only have a little bit more to go. Okay. So I guess going to capital projects, that was Councilmember Hahn's question. We're only about 25% on a lot of these, on a lot of the different funds. So it's still the same thing like in the capital projects. It takes a while to bid or RFP or engineer, then send the bid out. So a good 3 to 6 month window to do one big major project. Just knowing that when we prepare the budget, once we review it, Rick and myself and the directors, these projects aren't completed and they were really needed to still be done, they will be carried over because the money is already funded for all these projects that are here. The money is there for them. So that will be coming up with a budget cycle. If they are not completed, they'll be carried over, or they'll be repurposed for something else that may be needed more than what was originally there. So like we did do 3 small engineering services for 3 of the road projects, Chamisa, C2B Chamisa area phase 3 project, Salazar road improvements, and Town Hall Drive improvements. So you don't see the money being spent, but you see the progress going in. And now that we have our procurement officer advertised, hopefully get somebody on board, hopefully find somebody qualified right up front that we're not spending a lot of time training. Everything should go a little bit smoother, hopefully coming the new fiscal year. Debt service is just what it is. Most of the payments will come out in May, because all of them are with the majority of the Finance Authority. And on the second page, you can just see the numbers, mainly in general fund, just the projected. I did change the gross receipts as I mentioned, 4%, and included the 90 for the small cities grant. So projecting 10,724,000 at the end of the fiscal year for revenues, and transfers out of 323, and expenditures of 10,118,000. All projected within hopefully 5% of what the departments gave me. And you'll see that at the end of the fiscal year in July's report. You'll see a comparison of what they projected versus what they actually spent. Other than that, I think I stand for any questions.
Mr. Mayor and Marietta, thank you. Steve, could we roll back up to the airport?
Who's doing that? Oh.
Okay. So, Marietta, I need your guidance on this.
Yes.
Project Airport Construction, Fund 52, everybody see that?
Yes.
Up there, okay. Budgeted 9.8,
Yes.
spent 1.9.
Yes.
Open PO 553
Yes.
for a 19% completed project.
Right.
So, forgive my ignorance. What's the 9.8? What's our definition of that?
9.8 is 7.7 million for construction. That's what we estimated for the first phase. So that's in the budget this year, along with our match of, well, it changed. I think we brought that back to council. Our match is now 400 and some, and that went up to, I think, 8 point some. I have it right here, actually. That's part of that big amount. You know, the construction hasn't happened, so it's budgeted, but it hasn't happened yet. If you take that into consideration, say it happens in May, June, we spend maybe $1 million, the balance will be carried over.
Right.
So let me see what else. I think we've completed the overflight, the SRE building, the building out there for the big equipment. We're 100% nearly complete, not financially, but completion-wise on construction. And I think we had a tractor in there that we purchased. So really the big thing is the construction of the runway,
Okay.
the first phase.
So again, forgive my lack of understanding. So we have 9.8 in the bank for the airport.
We have 9.8 in the budget.
Okay.
So when we know we received the grant, then we know we can go ahead and start with either construction.
Okay, so that's just a projection.
That's a projection.
budgeted
Yes,
amount.
it's budgeted.
Okay.
But we budget so that we can show our match, so we have the cash. So when the construction comes through or the grant comes through, we have the cash to do it.
Gotcha.
And Counselor, it hasn't even gone out to bid yet, so
No.
we
Right.
don't even, that figure might not, it might be less or it might be more.
Right.
Yeah, it will just depend.
And then we've spent 1.9 year-to-date.
Yes. Do you want to know on what?
And the open PO is what we just approved a month or so ago.
The open purchase order is actually the snow removal equipment building. So the contract is open. We haven't paid anything. That's $355,000.
Okay.
And then we still have an amount open for the runway design, and $47,000 still for the overflight stipulators. That's like the final, whatever happens with that, the final payment out for that.
So I guess my question is, on this $24 million airport project, if our match was $1.4 million, why are we budgeting 9.8? I know I'm missing something there. It's just because I'm slow.
The projects are based on phases, so this first phase was when we budgeted, it was 7 million. The next phase, 7 million, the next phase, 7 million. So it went out through 4 years, the $24 million did, just the budget itself. So that's why you're only seeing this one, well, there's a combination of projects, but this one was 7 million in this first year. And it'll be 7 million next year. Now, if we don't finish, or we don't start the construction, it could be 14 million next year. The 7 from this year, the 7 for the next phase. And I'm just saying 7 because that's what we originally started with.
Thank you.
You can come sit in my office and I'll
I
show
may
you
be doing
lots
that,
of
but
it.
I know how busy you all are, and I just, so I might be doing that.
Okay, that's fine.
Councilor Peralta, you had a question?
No, I was just going to give a little more of an explanation to Councilmember Hahn, and that is that the rule is that we have to come up with our money first in order to create the pledge that we have that goes to the FAA for their pledge. So we have to come up with our 5%. We send that to the state comes up with their 5%, and then it goes to the feds. The anticipation was that from information we received from the feds was to apply for basically $8 million for the first phase. Second phase could be $14 million, or it could be half of that. So it just depends upon the funding that's available, and also then the actual bid coming in for the construction. So it could be less if it comes at 22 million, or it could come in at 26 million. We don't know. But this original amount that we are pledging goes against the federal match that will allow then for the bid to go out for the construction cost. When that is awarded, then the feds will determine how much they have in each budget year to make the project happen. So it could be 1 phase, 2 phases, 3 phases.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also say that the councilman's explanation extends to these other projects. For example, the low rate that you have a concern on utility construction, capital projects, and the other funds. If it's a highway project, particularly if there's utilities involved too, we can't, staff cannot begin to even talk about the project until they present it to you as the governing body and you authorize a line item for that. So there's a design phase. Even before we can go out to bid, we have to create a scope of services for that, which may involve an engineer who then has to, very often you go to Alex Abeda, he designs the actual bid that will go out. And that can take 3 to 4 months. So typically, road projects, utility projects don't get done within the fiscal year, although we budget them for the fiscal year. For auditing purposes and accountability, that they'll run between years, and most often they run between construction seasons rather than fiscal years. So it's not uncommon to see any large capital project having a low completion rate at the end of 1 year with the work anticipated to be done in the same construction season later in that year.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bellis and Marietta, the other question I have is, any of these grant funds that have a time constraint on?
They all do. They all do.
Yeah,
but we in our office keep track of the termination and expiration dates on them. Oh, I knew it.
Okay.
So yes, they all do.
Okay.
And there typically is reporting on these monies to the funding source, even if we're not spending them. We have to show monthly or quarterly progress reports on all of these, any grant that we receive. Even if it's no activity, you have to report that.
Right, usually quarterly.
Okay. Anything else on this item? You done with your?
I'm done with this one. I'm the next one too.
Yes.
So I'm just
Okay.
gonna.
So no action is needed on this one, so we'll go to Resolution 1423, budget adjustment to request consideration and possible approval of Resolution 1423, budget adjustment request to the general fund, increase revenues and expenditures for the following facilities budget: $400 for a donation received, police $1,113 for confiscation and forfeiture monies received, and 1999 gas tax acquisition fund transfer of $150,000 from 213 CDBG grant. and
Town match.
Excuse me?
Town match.
Oh, town match?
Yes.
And then I guess that's it.
That's it. So, really quick, the 400, some donation, you have the packet, $400 for trees and a plaque, $1,113 for police for some supplies. And the correction that I do need to make on the resolution itself is changing the map Salazar Road town match to the 2013 CDBG town match. And that's $150,000. You see the backup attached to reflect the cost. And in lieu of this $150 that we are taking from CDBG town match, we had a legislative appropriation for $160,000. So when we put the cost estimate together for CDBG, we didn't include that because we weren't sure if we could use it for that project. And we did get approval from the DOT, Department of Transportation, to use that for the Chamisa area intersection on US 68. So in lieu of the 150, we are getting 160. So that project now has $710,000, and this money will go to Town Hall to cover our cost estimate. Questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor?
With regards to the Salazar extension and getting that light put in on SDS, this won't hinder us in any way, right?
No, Salazar stays the same. That's why I confused you. I put Salazar and that's corrected. So Salazar is all set, and Chamisa now is all set, and Town Hall is all, well, set until we get the bids on everything.
Mr. Manager, do we have a timeline from the state as to when we can expect lights to start going in?
No, Councilman.
Can we check on that?
We will look into that, yes.
Thank you.
Any
other questions,
questions?
Council?
Nope. Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Nothing else from staff?
That's it. Thank you.
Call for the vote.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Thank you, Marietta.
Thank you.
I would like to, at some given time, go and speak with you about the small city assistant allotment that we get. Just want to make sure that I have a good idea of how that comes to us and in what manner. So. No, I'll just, we'll do it at some time. Yes, I do. So we'll go on to item C, approval of Mario Rosales regarding out-of-state training, consideration and possible approval of Mario Rosales to travel out of state to Boulder, Colorado in May and June to attend 2 classes and tests hosted by the International Code Council as required for his certified building official certification and his current position with the Town of Taos. Ms. Perkins and Mr. Bellis.
Mr. Mayor, you have the documentation before you, including the details through the 2 advanced travel vouchers for the travel periods. And this was previously approved as an expenditure by the council. However, because it involves out-of-state travel, which was not approved at the time, it needs to come back before you. And I would ask council to approve this with the understanding that we're under somewhat of a time constraint to get this before you. But at the same time, I'm working with Ms. Perkins on doing an analysis of the building statistics, and we might not actually expend this money going forward.
Not expend?
Probably would come back to council with a request for clarification on some issues. At this time, we're funding a building official 40 hours a week for a 4-day work week at about 100+ permits a year, which comes out to 2 a week.
So I guess, well, and just to shed some light, as part of the previous council that approved this, because of the state statute that went into effect, it puts the burden on the city or the county, either one, to have a certified building official within their staff if you have a planning department. Problem with that is that because of state statute, it made certified building officials a commodity, to where places like Los Alamos are paying probably $115,000 as opposed to what we're expending on a CBO. So I guess what it means to the city and the county alike, at some point if there's ever a joint collaboration, is that Taos does have its own certified building official, which is by now state statute unless something changes, which the one thing I don't think the state ever foresaw was the fact that a CBO was going to become a high-priced commodity, because now they're in demand and not everybody is a CBO. The grandfather clock is ticking. What's left on that? 4 years? 3 years?
I think around 3.
Yeah, it's been a year.
So
just, this month, in fact.
I guess for me, looking at it, I mean, I'd say it's well worth the money based on what he's willing to work for, compared to what he could be drawing from somewhere else, respectively a county like Los Alamos, to where they actually are pretty stingy with their CBOs, because we went through the period of not having staff and needing building permits pushed out and whatnot, and not having anybody on staff at either county or city puts building pretty much at a halt, and we end up being at the mercy of either A, the state, or B, a CBO within this area that's willing to contract with us, and contract could lead us in a way higher circumstance than what we're paying right now. So I would ask, and I'd ask this council to think long and hard about the value that comes with the CBO as opposed to the 100 permits a year. And I looked at, for me, looking forward at this, just being in the construction industry, is saying I'm starting to see the uptick. So if it starts to continue, we're going to find ourselves with more permits and nobody to inspect.
I guess I would just like the opportunity to come back to council with some closer findings and some possible recommendations. I certainly wouldn't want to put the municipality in the position of not having a CBO.
Councilor Peralta?
If by chance we're not going to do this, why are we approving it now? In other words, if you're going to come back to the council in a week or so and say, no, we're not going to send him, why are we looking at it now? Why wouldn't we look at it when you make a decision to actually send him or not?
It was indicated to me by the finance department that if it was going to happen, that it had to be on this agenda. However, if we have a meeting next week that we can conduct business at, certainly we could put it off for a week.
I mean, the only thing I could think of is, do we have to prepay the schooling? And then if we prepay it, are we going to lose it because we don't send somebody? I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of what is required of us to do and when in order to do or not to do. That's the question.
Well, unless Marietta has other details on this, I know that when I sent people for these tests at the county, as long as you went online even one day before, you could reserve a slot in the program. So I'm guessing it's probably just booking a room.
I think Mark has all the information because I'm not too sure about the class schedule. I only said because the next meeting would be after the date that we had to attend. That's the only reason I had for this meeting. But we have a meeting before the next regular meeting. But
You have a meeting on the 24th, 25th?
Yeah, so we would, believe the clerk.
Mayor, council members, you do have a special meeting scheduled for May 1st. That's next Thursday. That's an action item for a liquor license.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask, Martha, with regards to Maro's duties, is he serving dual function right now where he's actually doing planning duties as well as his inspections?
Currently, he's been primarily doing the building inspections and review of building plans.
Is that because of the uptick of what we're seeing, I mean, I guess even just GRT-wise and what's on the books?
Right. We had the Taos House project, which was quite a few units, so he was doing a lot of inspections associated with that. And so last year's permits were higher than what we've been seeing due to that project. So he's been busy. And yes, we have seen quite a few permits or plans coming over the counter. It's hard to say because we're starting the season where building starts to pick up. So it's really hard to know at this point how we're going to compare with the previous years. I do believe that he can register pretty late for this this test. He was scheduled to go the beginning of May. So, I mean, if you addressed it next week at the special meeting, that'd be significant.
And
that'd be
I as
time.
one was part of that tongue lashing of counselors that got it from our constituents and saying that we were the most unfriendly planning department previous to Martha coming on board with us. And, you know, as of date, I mean, people are saying that it's actually a pleasure to do business with the city again. And that's what I'm looking for. And also, not just that, but also having the knowledge that comes with Martha and Motto, I think, as a combined unit to facilitate that. And we looked. There was nobody else even nowhere near ready to become a CBO across the spectrum that was even close to us. So I guess what I'm looking for, Rick, is what are your concerns? And if we need to talk offline, I'm happy to do that. But, I mean, it's just, this is close to me because of the fact that my constituents end up in my office, whether they buy from me or not, to beat me up over planning issues.
I'm aware of that, Counselor, and unfortunately we haven't had the opportunity to speak about it, but I would be happy to share my concerns.
Okay.
From a financial perspective.
Okay. So, Council, what's the wishes? We can move to table this. We can till our next available meeting, or if it needs to be heard in executive session. I think it can because it is a personnel matter. Jake?
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. I certainly would take the position that this falls into the category that could be discussed under an Open Meetings Act exemption, if that was the desire of the council. I can make some other suggestions too about how you might move this along.
Please.
One, I think that it's become a habit in the town, and I've just been looking to find the policy behind it of approving out-of-state travel, which is not uncommon at all. I think this council could do that tonight with some conditions in order to give the town manager, for example, some flexibility in dealing with it going forward, like approving it subject to the town manager's final approval. Now, I don't know, frankly, how extensive the conversation that needs to happen might be if you want to consider going into executive session now. It seems to me like there may be a need to speed this along a little bit. And that's all I have to say.
It wouldn't kill us to have the decision made on May 1st, would it? I mean, in
No,
any way.
I think that'd be fine.
When is the class or the
May 11th, it looks like, is the first.
12th through the 16th of May, and the 16th through the 20th of June.
Okay. I think we have time. Council?
We could either do one of two things, Mayor. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, if they want to be in on that. I know I, for one, am certainly want to know what falls behind it, but go ahead, Councilor.
No, I'm just reacting to the manager's saying that the time he has to be there is from the 12th through the 16th, so why are we paying for the 18th, I mean the 17th, no, wait a minute. Why are we, if he's going to be there on the 11th, why are we paying for the 11th?
You provided a breakout to Martha earlier, which for the legal test was May 11th, drive to Denver, Colorado, May 12th to 16th, test prep. For legal CBO, May 17th, test, May 17th, drive to Taos after test, and pretty much it follows that same scenario for the June calendar also.
But I'm just saying, why are we paying for course cost for the travel day?
It's per diem cost, so he's traveling, he's taking a town vehicle and driving up there.
That's per diem.
Right.
You have here, he's got in his request, $115 for a travel day to the examination center.
Right, and 115 is the per diem to go, to drive up there for that day. And then he needs another day to drive back. And then he's staying there and taking the class, the pre-test class, and then taking the test.
Okay, so he doesn't have his cost for the class here. This is just his per diem. Never mind, I understand now.
Okay.
Council, what's the wishes of the council?
Do you guys want to move it into executive at the end of the meeting, or we can meet, I guess, one-on-one with Rick and...
If it would make things easier, I can assure you that I would not make any decision on this without consulting with every member of the council in advance. I've tried to do that with a few council members to get their input, inform them, and I just haven't gotten through everybody because of our other meetings.
So, we have a motion to...
I'd like to make a motion to table this until the May 1st meeting, so we could have the opportunity to meet individually with Mr. Bellis.
Or bring it back as an item. We have a motion. We have a second to that motion. Okay. Motion dies for a lack of a second. We have a second motion. Or we can move on because there was no motion, no action.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to discuss an executive session with regards to the out-of-state travel of Mato Rosales for the CBO certification, and that would be moved to item, I guess it would become item 12D.
We have a motion to do that. Is it all within the legal parameters?
Mr. Mayor, council members, yeah, I think as long as it's clear that the motion is to, I believe, table this item until further down on the agenda, and at that time to go into executive session under Open Meetings Act exemption 10.1H, 10.15.1H2 regarding limited personnel matters. Is that a fair characterization of your motion?
Yes, sir.
Counselor?
We have a motion. We have a second to that motion. No, that motion dies for a lack of a second, so there's then no action will be taken on this item tonight. Is that a fair statement?
Mr. Mayor, council members, unless there's another motion forthcoming. I thought I saw a hand going up, but no.
Okay, then we'll go on to matters from the mayor and council, youth council member. Council reports on committee assignments. I don't know if anybody's had any time to meet, but Councilor Hahn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like the council's approval to place on the May 6th agenda for discussion and possible approval a motion to accept option C of the Taos Regional Landfill Board's suggested rate increase offsetting projected deficits. Marietta, would that give you time to maybe include that in the councilor's agenda packet so that they could review those options, so that at our next council meeting we could come in and
13th.
look at that?
I think it's on the 13th.
13th.
I have the 6th for some reason. Yeah, I've got the 6th. This is the 22nd. Is our next, okay, so it is the 13th?
Second Tuesday of the month.
Okay, I thought it was every other. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, could we include it as part of the budget presentation on the 8th or 9th whenever we are presenting the solid waste budget at that time? Would that be appropriate?
I think this item needs action. I think it's an action item, so I think it needs to go on a regular meeting.
That's correct. And the landfill is meeting, Marietta, on the 21st. So if we can get an informational packet to the mayor and council, I think we could probably move pretty quick through that. You're already aware briefly of what the situation is. We can go up and down, up or down on it, and then I can report back to the landfill board on the 21st as to the council's decision.
So for the meeting of the first meeting of the month in
Correct.
The
in May.
13th.
The 13th, okay. I will put it as an agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anything else from council on committee assignments? None?
Just one, Mr. Mayor, and that's with regards to the Regional Coalition of Landfill Communities. Regular meeting is this week, and I'd urge, if the public will be there, we will have Secretary Flynn of the State Environment Department talking about the deep water wells with regards to Los Alamos National Labs, and slight contamination is what they're calling it, and the NMED's remediation for it. There's a new consent order out before Congress and the NMED and Los Alamos, or lands, for the management and what takes place under the New Mexico Environmental Department's consent order, and how they operate. So I think it's vital to what happens to this region, because my fear, my concern is one day that landfill waste will end up closer to Taos than we'd like it to be.
What day is that?
That will be this coming Friday, April 25th. And it's at the Los Alamos County Council Chambers. And if no one can attend, I will brief everybody on our next meeting.
What time is that meeting?
It is at 9 a.m. And Commissioner Blankenhorn and myself are on the regional coalition. We will both be there.
You may call me already. Councilor? I know you're in thought.
Yes, I am. I got confused and dazed, which is not unusual because I use one of these calendars. It'd be even worse if I had one of those machines that Arsenio has. So I was talking with Mr. Bellis earlier. We have 2 police officers who sat with a vet and really helped this man. And during National Mental Health Month, we were going to honor them.
Recognize them.
And I need to give an indication to the PHO board. It was Jim who made that presentation to us 2 weeks ago. PHO meaning Physicians Health Organization. On the 6th as to whether we're going to try and do something for this officer on the 13th or 27th. So we can't take any action on this because it's not on the agenda. So
13, you can advise staff to put it on the agenda for the 13th.
Which is what Rick will do, and then we'll go up or down on it on the 27th?
No, I think we can.
13th, Chief?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Hahn is actually already on the agenda, and it's actually going to be 3 officers that are going to be recognized. 2 officers from that event, and then an officer that dealt with the same individual a year ago.
Okay, so does that mean on the 13th, Chief, that we're going to be honoring these officers?
I believe so. Let me look over to the clerk.
Okay, so I should notify the PHO then to be here. And there was something else associated with that. Do you think if the PHO has another issue there, could they tag on at the end? I can't recall what it is, but.
Oh, I can do. We can do anything. Sure.
Okay, so we're good to go on the 13th. That's what I'll tell them.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Sorry for the confusion.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else on this item? Not, we'll go on to item B, settlement agreement regarding airport annexation. Review and possible approval of settlement agreement between the Town of Taos and Taos County regarding airport annexation. Mr. Jake Caldwell.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. You'll recall in the joint town-county meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago on the 10th that one of the items that was voted on was a memorandum of agreement that set forth various terms regarding a proposed settlement between the town and county. The direction at that time was to formalize those essential terms into a more formal settlement agreement, which Bob Malone, county attorney, and I have worked together to accomplish and present to you today for your consideration. I should say tonight, almost tomorrow. Mr. Mayor and council members, I hope you've all had an opportunity to review what's in your agenda packet. Really, it takes the memorandum of terms that was discussed that day and puts them in the context of a fairly standard boilerplate settlement agreement. And with that, I would be happy to summarize those terms if that's the wish of the council, or to answer any questions you might have.
Recommendation from legal and from staff, Mr. Bellis.
Mr. Mayor, council, fully in favor of the agreement. Mosquito move ahead.
Mr. Caldwell, I know you worked on it, but.
Well, Mr. Mayor and council members, you know, this is pretty straightforward. This is an agreement whereby the town would drop the annexation appeal and the county would pledge up to $375,000 on the basis of gross receipts revenue that are anticipated or would be anticipated on a $24 million construction project had the annexation stayed in place during the course of that construction. In my legal opinion, what is presented to you accomplishes those terms.
Mr. Mr. Mayor, my only concern that wasn't included in here would have been the concern about the airport zoning. However, in further discussions with the town attorney, we believe that the town, if the county doesn't cooperate, has specific authority as a municipal regional airport to put the necessary zoning in place to be compliant with the FAA plan that was submitted by the engineering experts prior to our coming on board.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, do we still have the availability, I guess even though it's not in here, to work on creating that airport zoning district as a joint collaboration? Again, going back to the fact of not binding future governments to a set dollar amount. I know the county showed interest in actually making it a true regionalized airport where both entities would contribute funding towards operation, development, everything moving forward. I guess for me it's creating the taxation district out there that allows its own, I guess, taxing authority for improvements and everything else that comes with it. I know it's not contained in here, and it's, for me, it's a completely separate aside issue from the annexation. Just is it something that we can move forward with in the near future?
Mr. Mayor, Council,
Rick, is your mic on?
As you're aware, the county has currently now published its new version of its land use code, which includes county zones that can be created. I guess I should have left the microphone off. And we will be submitting language for them to recommending the inclusion of an airport, regional airport zone that would allow not just for the FAA public safety portion, but for an economic development zone with that in mind. The offer that was made last year, I guess by the county, which was put out by myself, and I believe the mayor was here for that presentation. There's new staff over there, and there's some hesitation as to whether they think it's a wise investment to be in the airport business. However, we are putting together some numbers, not just for the county, but for the public in general, and some of you saw some of those emails which show that it's a smart investment in what could be a self-sustaining and eventually profit-making venture. And we have confidence that we'll turn them around for a very small investment.
Okay.
So, council, what's the wishes of the council?
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion to approve. It's the settlement agreement. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second. Further discussion? Please.
Arsenio Cordova, and I would like to speak in favor of the motion. You know, it's been a long, drawn-out fight with people in our community feeling threatened by annexation. We are working presently with our state representative and senator to declare El Prado a historic district, you know, under the new land use development codes. It's not easy when you don't have too much of a say-so, because one government that doesn't represent you makes decisions for you. And I do want to say that I am happy that the collaboration, the meeting the other day was a stellar meeting, I think, for the residents, make us feel a little more comfortable. But, you know, I just hope that as we go forward, you will support us in declaring our community historical district. I don't know that Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Peralta appreciate the identity that comes with the culture, you know, that comes with people knowing who they are. And, you know, a people without a knowledge of their history is like a tree without any roots. And, you know, just in hearing the conversations about agricultural, cultural, residential, we come to a point where somebody else is deciding for a community what is best for them without consulting with the community. I really would like to thank the County Commission for voting on this the other day. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't vote for it during that meeting for on the town side. Of course, Mr. Peralta wanted more formal presentation on this. I'd like to thank Mr. Caldwell, Mr. Bellis for coming out, working with the county on this particular resolution. The acequia culture is very, very important to us. And when that is violated, it's, identity means a lot to us. Right now we have been crossing from one side of my street. I have to cross through Taos to get to El Prado again to see Mrs. Cisneros that I visit on a daily basis. And, I make a joke of it because, I have to come through Taos to go to El Prado, in Prado, west side, to visit people. But I'd like to speak on behalf of the motion, and I hope that it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Cordova, maybe you can qualify for out-of-town travel that way.
Call for the vote.
Councilmember Cantu?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta?
Yes.
Councilmember Han?
Yes.
Thank you. So item C, contract for municipal detainee confinement and review and possible approval of contract between the Town of Taos and Taos County for municipal detainee confinement. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. This also was an item discussed at the April 10th joint town-county meeting, and to be honest, none of us were entirely clear in our recollection of how this matter was treated. So in the interests of full disclosure, we decided to put it on the agenda. This is simply to recap the discussion that was had that day with regard to the inmate confinement contract at a blanket rate of $75 a day, subject to all previously discussed terms, which have not changed.
Chief? And
I would, of course, defer to the chief to add anything or to correct me in any regard.
Mr. Caldwell, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The contract calls for a straight $75 a day for inmates that are confined inside the adult detention center. The original contract had a booking fee that's been waived by the county, and I actually think this is actually a pretty smart move for us. I think this will allow us to do a lot of work with the municipal court and also with hopefully with some of the recidivism that we have.
And keeping the inmates here in town really would benefit.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, I really believe it does. It's going to do a couple things for us. As it stands right now, if we have an inmate goes in for, I believe, more than 5 days, a person is actually transported down to San Miguel County. My hope, I have a couple aspects that I'm hoping to achieve. I like to have all of our inmates stay inside Taos County, and then if we need to attach social services to them, the inmate is here, we can do that. Second thing is it allows their family to have visitation, and we've been shown that that actually has some effect on recidivism, especially with children. The third thing is we would be able to keep all the inmates underneath municipal court, or most of them, underneath municipal court, so we'll have one judge dealing with that person. And if the person keeps coming back to the court, the one judge has the contact with them, so has that history with them. And then finally, Judge Chavez and I have been talking. We would really like to be able to try to create a part-time surveillance officer or probation officer. And so that's something we can start working on as well. So altogether, I'm really actually kind of excited about the possibilities of being able to keep people inside there and work on some of our frequent flyers.
And it doesn't I guess, doesn't get away, that we're going to keep some of that money that in Taos County too, that was possibly going
Yes, sir.
to another county. Counselor?
A couple of questions. Does the detention facility house children as well?
It does have a juvenile facility as well, but all of our juveniles will stay here. But if we have an adult that's inside the, when we put an adult inside there, they're allowed to have visitation rights with their children. And so that's where that nexus happens.
So if they're both incarcerated, they can get together and have a familiar visit?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but yeah.
The other question I had for you, and this is part of the contract, and it talks about medical costs.
Yes, sir.
And both physical and mental.
Yes, sir.
And that cost is our cost, correct?
That is correct, sir.
In the past, how much has that part gone into your budget?
Mr. Counselor, I don't know. I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't have that information. I can certainly research that for you and send a group email to the council tomorrow.
But that's included in that total budget that you've been given
yes,
every
sir.
year for incarceration?
Yes, sir. The correctional budget right now is standing at $135,000 a year. And whether the inmate is inside the adult detention center or San Miguel, that's kind of a normal part of the contract. We have to engage those costs.
And Chief, they do then qualify for indigent, correct, within the facility? So a lot of times, once they qualify for indigent, a lot of the medical is then taken care of through that indigent care program.
That's correct. And this is also another aspect of this is that Tri-County has begun speaking with us and also with the detention center. We're starting to work with mental health issues. My contention, I mean several's contention, that person has psychological issues that don't need to be inside jail. And the other aspect of it is the increased cost to the facility healthcare-wise. So that's another aspect that we're working through Tri-County and possibly creating a jail diversion program. I mean, that's my hope.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I want to thank the Chief for opening up a dialogue with County Manager Steve Archuleta on the mental health issue and a number of issues that I think are going to improve the entire system for everybody.
I think so. I hope so. And I've also been very impressed with the county, with Mr. Archuleta. Quite honestly, this last month has been a very, very enjoyable month. We've been able to get a lot of good conversations going, talking about law enforcement and community correction and mental health. So I'm looking I feel very optimistic about the future.
Thank you. Councilor Hahn, you have any?
I'm very grateful to you, Chief. I'm totally supportive of this. You know, I am in dialogue right now with Judge Ortega and Shannon about kind of the flip side of what you just mentioned, Chief, and that is in some cases with someone who is suffering from mental illness, there is a need for short-term holding without formal charging. Especially if we have someone who is mentally handicapped and faces the likelihood of being put into a home at a later time. So, but that's something, you don't need to worry about that. That's something that Judge Ortega, Shannon, and I, family, and Steve, and adult detention people, Miss Jonah Gonzalez, I think it is. We've got to work that out. So I guess my only comment is be wary of cookie cutters. You usually get cut with them.
Right, you know,
or fat.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this. You know, what someone might say that detention is actually a relatively simple topic. It's not. There's multiple different aspects to it.
It's very, yeah. So anyway, totally supportive of this endeavor, though. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else on this item?
Nope.
Is there a motion to?
Move for approval, Mr.
We
Mayor.
have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Not call for the vote.
Yes.
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 Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, before you do that, two dates I want to point out. One is Thursday, the 24th, coming up here, 6 o'clock at the Old County Courthouse. We are holding a public forum to gather input into how we should proceed in regards to tourism and marketing going forward. As you're aware, there'll be almost close to $1 million in lodgers tax spent by the town this year. And we want to get public input as to what works, what doesn't work, things we may be trying or not trying. The other meeting is Monday, the 28th. Here in these chambers will be a joint meeting between the town and county. And we'll get an agenda out to you tomorrow. And pretty much there'll be a quick rundown on the issues that we've accomplished at since the last meeting, and a couple of new ones. They'll be in this room.
Okay.
So that'll be here, Mr. Bellis, at 11 a.m. on the 28th. 11 a.m.?
I believe it's 9, but I'll double check on it.
I believe it's 9, but unless it's changed.
Members, oh, thank you. Mayor, council members, on my calendar, I have 11, so I'm not sure.
Guess it's 11 then. We'll go with 11.
What is this? What date is this?
It is Monday, the 28th.
Well,
I will send you an invite.
yeah, let's confirm.
Yes,
You're absolutely right, Madam Clerk. The county, after its last meeting, changed it to 11 because they had a phone conference call with the state agency at 9 o'clock.
I'll send the council an invite for this as well. I'm not sure if it's on the calendar.
Joint county city meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn?
First.
No, 28th.
I'll make that motion.
We have a second?
No. Second.
And a second. Discussion, okay.
Yeah, it's not 1 o'clock. What are we,
No,
suckers?
that's because we've been in meetings since 10:30 this morning.
We're not supposed to leave till 1 a.m., Andrew.
Well, 10 to 10, 12 hours of city time, I think
That's all I have to say.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.